Don't miss the awesome Naruto stories my sister creates. Her last channel was hacked, so to stay in the loop, please subscribe to her new channel. It would mean a lot to her, and you won't regret it. Hello to all lovers of lemon scenes. I invite you all to my boosty so you can watch your favorite Naruto What If stories in complete comfort. A subscription to Naruto Lemon, the first video with a full lemon, is already on my boosty channel. Dare! How many times has he heard this before? How many times have I seen people pronounce these words with effort? How many times have I watched my eyes fill with tears and my voice become hoarse when I need to utter a simple word: father, brother, mother, sister. Ernest Hemingway. For Whom the Bell Tolls. POV Konoha resident. The first thing I saw when I woke up at night was fire. He was everywhere. He burned everything in his path. My room was blazing with a terrible bloody flame. My soul was filled with fear. I am not a shinobi, and for me fire is an unbridled element. I ran out into the corridor and ran to my parents' room. The door swings open, hitting the wall, and the fire slides out of the room towards me. Dad is lying in blood on the floor, an iron rod is sticking out of his chest, and scalding red tongues are blazing around him. Scream. I recognize this voice from 1,000. Mother. I turn my gaze to the woman I love. She lies under the collapsed beams, slowly burning. Her beautiful brown hair turned to ash. The face, chest, arms are black, there is no skin. Mom, Dad, the voice is unusually quiet, the throat is dry from excitement, some kind of desperate wheeze escapes. The scream froze in my throat. No. This is a dream, a nightmare. A real nightmare. Now I'll wake up, and my mother will pat me on the head and quietly sing a lullaby. My father will look at me with condemnation, but he will also be worried. A man must be brave, he must not show his fear, right? My legs gave way and I fell like a heap to the floor. No. 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 Is this my cry? Mom turned her gaze to me. Her body was covered in burns, she couldn't get out, a beam fell on her, getting in her way. Run, son, she still looked at me tenderly, please live. Another beam falls, and along with it part of the wall, burying the most loved ones and relatives. Run. 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 I'm running from this room, from this house, from this place. Forward. Further. Do not stop. My feet are taking me somewhere. I don't see anything in front of me. Only my mother's disfigured face with a gentle smile. A dream, it's all a dream. I don't believe. This can't be true. A sound that shatters glass and rips through your eardrums. I raised my head up and saw him. He was the very embodiment of fire, horror, hatred, pain. All the fears and desires of people were collected in him. He stood on the destroyed houses and growled angrily. He was made of fire. Out of anger. He was so close. A few more 100 meters and I will die. I was gripped by horror. Primitive horror of death. Scary. Help me. A giant toad appeared next to the monster, and the Hokage stood on its head. Hope began to shine in the depths of my soul. We will survive, we will be saved. Let this monster die. A fragile female silhouette with a child appeared next to the fourth Hokage. She took Minato-sama's place and began to form different shapes with her fingers. Light. Bright, blinding to the eyes. Cold, grave cold. Death. No, she didn't come for me, she came for the fox. Death stood next to the woman, whose scarlet hair flowed in the wind like a bloody cloak, and stretched her bony fingers towards the nine-tailed fox. A crazy smile bloomed on my lips. Kill, 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 this thought was beating like an alarm bell in my head, rushing through my brain, hitting the walls of my skull. No, it's blood that beats. The fox slowly began to turn into a fiery whirlwind, and the whirlwind in a slow stream reached towards the baby in the Hokage's arms. Death turned fox into a child. I hate it. Die. It is easier to hate than to love. Just as it is easier to judge others by yourself. It is easier to be offended than to forgive. It is more difficult to have mercy than to offend. Arena Zabavina. What's easier? Minato sat in the Hokage's office and slowly looked through the documents accumulated during the day, which, stacked in piles on the table, blocked almost the entire view. This man's life could not be called simple. From early childhood, too much expectation was placed on him. His entire youth was spent in constant training and trying to prove something to others. Only Kushina was the only ray that illuminated his life. She was always by his side, supporting him in difficult times, helping him cope with grief and failures. When he became an ANBU, she followed him like an invisible shadow. And in war. Minato tried to tear this sheet of biography out of the tattered book of his life more than once, but even so, he could not forget. No, everything was so deeply ingrained in memory that it seemed that even oblivion would not dispel the bitter memories. In the war, Minato lost too much. Uchiha Obito, a mischievous boy who dreamed of becoming the strongest Hokage, defeating Kakashi and marrying Rin. No era Rin. The fourth simply did not have time, and she was killed. For the good of the village, as it is said arrogantly. Then, in the war, the fourth Hokage lost not only Obito and Rin, but also Kakashi. No, he remained alive, but another scar appeared on his already cut soul. He has changed forever. That correct and punctual boy is no longer left. He died with his first friends. Minato sighed heavily. He's lost too much. His students, in the war, his wife, 4 years ago, when an unknown masked ninja attacked Konoha and released the Kyuubi. Then his beloved wife gave birth to a new meaning in life for the man, Naruto, a little bundle of blonde happiness. Jinchuriki do not survive after the bijou are removed, but she did it, not for long, but she did it. Then, exactly 4 years ago, on the 10th of October, Kushina, while Minato was distracting Madara, decided to use Fuinjutsu, Shiki Fujin to get rid of the dark part of the Kyuubi's chakra, and seal the rest in Naruto. Then she did what he couldn't. Now, so much time after her death, the man became stronger every day in the thought that he had made a terrible father. He, instead of protecting his son from all the troubles in the world, on the contrary, hated Naruto with every fiber of his soul. It is he who is to blame for the death of the only ray of light in his life. The fourth Hokage tried more than once to overcome himself and forgive Naruto. But he couldn't. He couldn't, and he's unlikely to ever be able to. And as if in mockery, fate gave the child her appearance. The same beautiful scarlet hair, like blood, which Naruto, as if to spite his father, does not cut off, and every day it grows longer, making his resemblance to his mother stronger and stronger. The same soft ones. Faces. And the same sunny smile, capable of penetrating with its light into the darkest and most hidden corners of the darkened soul. From Minato, the child inherited sky-blue eyes that seemed to see the very essence of a person, pulling out all the hidden fears and monsters that denigrate nature. The only thing that distinguished Naruto Uzumaki from his parents were 3 stripes on each cheek, which reminded everyone who was sealed inside this boy. Although, no one considered Naruto a child for a long time. Demon, monster, freak, murderer, these are the names used to address the boy. The fourth sighed heavily again and went to the window, looking at Konoha, drowning in the light of the setting sun. Namikaze peered into the reddening distance, but apparently did not see what he wanted and returned back to the table littered with paper mountains. Naruto's POV. Pain. Cold. Dark. Loneliness. Fear. These concepts have haunted me throughout my life. I never knew what family meant. What about family? I have never felt simple human warmth. If someone had just once said a kind word to me, allowed me to feel for a moment the kindness of the human heart, this would have been enough for the further struggle for life, for existence. But no one cared about me. And now, lying in a pool of my own blood, I understand that this is the end. There is no more strength to fight. There is no desire to live, there is no meaning for which to live. Even if hated and despised by everyone, but if there was someone for whom you would want to rise over and over again, not paying attention to the constant pokes, kicks, and glances full of indifference or disgust. Unbidden, angry tears of pain, loneliness and self-loathing for weakness and powerlessness rolled down my cheeks. Slowly but surely, I began to descend into the darkness in which I intended to spend the rest of my time. But for some reason I ended up not on death row, but in the sewer. My nervous, booming laugh echoed throughout the spacious, damp room. It looked like they wouldn't let me die in peace. There were pipes everywhere, from which cold drops fell, flowing down. They fell and broke on the surface of the water, which reached my ankles. Cold, wet and dark. And also terribly scary. It's scary to be here. The life of a shinobi forces you to grow up quickly, but no matter how far I hid my own fears, they always rose to the surface with new forces, stunning me. Closing my eyes, getting used to the dim reddish light, I moved forward. Looking at my feet and leaning on the smooth slippery walls, I followed the call in my head, demanding not to stop and go to him. And I walked. Slowly and without looking back. I was not afraid, because this voice promised safety and protection. Although why do I need it after death? Slowly moving along the long winding corridor, I stopped only when I found myself in a large, spacious hall. In the center was a huge golden grill with some kind of written paper attached to the gate. Inside the cage, red eyes with vertical pupils appeared, burning with endless hatred. Who you are? I fearfully approached the cage, shuddering almost every second. Ignorant creature, something snorted contemptuously from behind the bars, causing me to get goosebumps. Kyubi no Yoko, nine-tailed demon fox, have you heard of this, you little bug? Boomed a thunderous voice. Yes, I answered in a trembling, completely disobeying voice. You attacked Konoha 4 years ago. You were defeated by the 4th Hokage-sama. 4th? This coward ran from me. Pathetic nonentity. The one who sealed me in you was Kushina and no one else. In my? So I'm a Jinchuriki? That's why everyone hates me. I sank onto the water-filled floor and began to sob quietly, feeling that in a few minutes the sobs would develop into full-fledged hysterics. Yes, I see, you are so pathetic that you can't even help but cry. The fox's voice was saturated with contempt for me. Sorry, Kyubi-sama. Sorry, it's because of me that you're sitting here. You are locked up and alone. Sorry, I don't know why, but I felt sorry for this demon. He is also lonely, he has no one, and everyone hates him. As did me. But it's not his fault that he was sealed into me. Hey, what are you doing, little guy? Did you happen to hit your head today? I'll let you out. Said in a firm voice. I'm almost dead anyway. I have no desire to live. Just please don't destroy the village. I jumped to my feet and rushed towards the bars behind which the fox was locked. Jumping up and grabbing the tip of the seal with his fingers, he pulled it towards himself. Hey kid, stop it right now. You're going to die. Kyubi shouted, but I didn't listen to him. I just pulled the paper even harder. She, with obvious reluctance, tore herself away from the cage. Literally a few seconds later she flew off the bars and, before reaching the wet floor, burned in the fire. And then something strange began. A fiery stream of chakra erupted from the cage, causing the doors to fly open, nearly ripping them off their hinges. The fire chakra approached me and began to place, like a kitten that ran out to meet its beloved owner. I looked at the demonic chakra in bewilderment, not understanding what was happening here. Raising my surprised gaze to ask the fox, what happened, instead of answering, I saw even more surprised scarlet eyes. Incredible. So you are his descendant. Whom? I didn't understand. I don't even know who my parents are, let alone whose descendant I am. Your head is stupid. Rikudo, who else? I blinked my eyes even more intensely. This simply cannot be. Which one of me is his descendant? That's right, none. Kyubi-sama, maybe you're mistaken, what kind of descendant am I? He decided to voice his thoughts. I don't even have parents. What do parents have to do with it? Moreover, all people have parents, and you are no exception. And I'm never wrong. The bijou growled, looking into the boy's surprised blue eyes. And remember one more thing, only one person could tame the tailed chakra. And that person was Rikudo Sennin. Yes, there are also Uchihas, but they do not subjugate the chakra, but the mind. Clear? Yes. But I already died. You had to die to understand that you are a descendant of such a great man, the first shinobi, hero, Rikudo Sennin. Who told you such nonsense? But I was beaten in the alley, and I felt like I was dying. Don't worry, you're still alive. If you had died, you wouldn't be here now. So, get out of here, it wasn't enough for you to catch a cold. So go, there's no point in lying on the cold ground. It was as if I had been pushed out of my inner world. I woke up in the same back alley, still lying on the ground in a pool of my own blood. The thought that I most likely dreamed that conversation with Kyubi-sama brought tears to my eyes. Come on, stop creating dampness, you are a man, a future shinobi, and they don't cry. A growling voice rang out in my head, which undoubtedly belonged to the nine-tailed fox. Kyubi-sama. I shouted happily. What, are you completely crazy? Do you want a squad of ANBU led by the Hokage to tie you up now? Said the fox angrily. Sorry, Kyubi-sama, I said to myself. Oh, a restless child, just like his mother. To mom? Yes, you are very similar to your mother. By the way, she was my previous Jinchuriki, and also the wife of that coward, the fourth. Cube, before I could finish, I was interrupted by the demon's voice. Stop calling me that. For the first few minutes such treatment is, of course, flattering, but then it starts to frankly get boring, so call me kurama. By the way, don't stand there like a pillar, go home, it's cold outside. I went in the direction of my small house, located on the outskirts of the village. Kurama-sa, Kurama, please tell me about your parents. Where to start? Probably from the very beginning, and Kurama began to tell me about different things, about who my parents are, about their life, childhood, adolescence, about their problems, love and hatred. Most of all, the fox talked about his mother. Since she was his Jinchuriki, he knew almost everything about her. At first, Kurama talked about how I, like my mother, belonged to the Uzumaki clan, who are descendants of Hagoromo Otsutsuki, along with the same Uchiha and Senju. If the Uchiha received the Sharingan from Rikudo, and the Senju received spiritual and physical strength, then the Uzumaki received the eyes of Rikudo, the Rinnegan, and the ability to control the chakra of the tailed beasts. But, if the Uchiha and Senju had abilities, all members of the clan showed abilities, despite gender, age and degree of relationship. For Uzumaki, everything was much more complicated, because the power of the eyes was manifested only in an extremely small part of children, exclusively boys. According to the fox, my Rinnegan will also have to awaken, because I am able to tame the chakra of tailed creatures, which means the power of my eyes will soon manifest itself. And then he talked about the destruction of the village of Whirlpool, after which few people survived. Kushina arrived from the Whirlpool a year before the destruction of the village in order to become the new Jinchuriki. At 7 she entered the Shinobi Academy, and it was there that she met my father, the future fourth Hokage. According to Kurama, my mother had a terribly explosive temper, and because of her hair color, she was often called a tomato. Naturally, these death row inmates did not leave the hospital ward for long. Kushina tried to send the offenders back as quickly as possible. And one day she was kidnapped by shinobi of another village in order to capture one of the last representatives of the once great Uzumaki clan, because in addition to the Rikudo heritage, the members of this clan were known for their large reserves of chakra and mastery of fuinjutsu. No other shinobi was capable of repeating what the Uzumaki could, many simply lacked the strength. Also, some representatives of this clan were very good sensors, capable of sensing chakra at great distances. So the shinobi of the fog wanted one of these for their village. And besides all the advantages of the blood of this clan, Kushina was a Jinchuriki, the power of the village. And it was then that my father saved my mother by going in search of her, following the trail of scarlet hair that she left behind her. Then the fox told how happy they were to learn that they would soon have a child. And at this point in the story, I couldn't stand it and asked, why, if he was so happy about my birth, he didn't protect me at all, didn't even tell me that he was my father? Then Kurama told me about his fate, smoothly moving on to the events of the fateful night of my birth. On that night, exactly 4 years ago, the seal, as a result of childbirth, was greatly weakened. And the man in the orange mask, with those eyes that the fox hated, tore the 9 tails out of Kushina's body and set it on the village. Then my mother, who had 1 foot on the threshold of the Shinigami, sealed half of the kyubi inside me. And my father began to blame me for everything, believing that it was I who caused the death of his beloved wife. I felt sad. I felt sorry for myself, Kurama, and Mom and Dad. I really didn't understand why we were in so much trouble. Remembering that ninjas don't cry, I sobbed silently again. I didn't blame my father. In a sense, even understanding him, because he really felt bad. As far as I understood from the words of the fox, for Dad, Mom was the only light breaking through the storm clouds. Having lost her, he needed someone who could be held to blame for this loss. And I became this someone, the 9-tailed one in the guise of a child. Probably on that day Minato buried his beloved wife and, in his opinion, his unborn son. So, while thinking, I reached my house on the outskirts of the village. Taking off his shoes in the hallway, he walked with a staggering gait to his room to fall into a restless but sound sleep. The phrase, "I'm working," is surrounded by an aura of respectful approval. In reality, we often work to avoid facing ourselves, our spouses, and our true feelings. Julia Cameron. The morning greeted me with a gloomy sky. A lonely ray of light made its way through the old curtains, which was soon lost among the thick gray clouds. Having opened my eyes, I rubbed them to quickly come to my senses, after which I got up and trudged to the first floor towards the kitchen. His stomach was loudly indignant at the long lack of attention to him. My house was relatively small. As I was told, it once belonged to my mother. I moved into it only a couple of months ago, when I was allowed to leave the shelter. The house was 2 stories. The first one had a kitchen, a large bathroom and a cluttered living room. Everything, of course, is in disrepair, but you can live. On the second floor there were 3 bedrooms, an office and another bathroom, smaller than the one below. So far I have only looked at the bedrooms. I adapted one, which, in my opinion, looked more decent than the rest, into my room. Since I've lived here relatively recently, I haven't had time to clean up yet. And today I had grandiose plans for cleaning the territory entrusted to me. Wow, I know so many smart words. In general, I never noticed that I disliked books. I tried to read something every day, and thanks to my good memory I remembered all the tips and useful things. While thinking, I managed to go down to the first floor and go into the kitchen. She, too, was not in the best condition. There is dust and dirt everywhere. The refrigerator does not work. There are dried sticky spots of unknown origin on the table. I realized that until I cleaned up, there was no hope of eating properly here, and there was no food in the house. The one that was prepared by the housekeeper had run out last night. Having quickly dressed in gray shorts and a black t-shirt with a whirlpool pattern on the back, I hurried out of the house. As the fox said, this sign denoted belonging to the Uzumaki clan, but after my clan entered into a peace treaty with Konoha, it began to be used as a symbol of friendship. Jumping out into the street, I took another look at my house, with peeling plaster in places and uneven paint, and then rushed to the shops. The orphans were not paid very much. But for some reason I was always given more than the other children. This, by the way, was one of the reasons why the children in the orphanage disliked me. Previously, I didn't understand how I was different from others, but now, after meeting Kyubi, Kurama echoed in my head. Don't eavesdrop on other people's thoughts. I got a little angry. It's still unpleasant when your thoughts are read, even if it's your friend. I myself don't understand why I began to consider Kurama a friend. I guess I was just pleased that at least someone cares and worries about me. So where did I stop? Oh yes. Previously, I didn't know the reason why I was given some concessions, but after Kurama told me that my father was Hokage, I understood where these bonuses came from. And by my actions I can judge that even though my father blames me for my mother's death, he still loves me at least a little. Smiling, I moved on, already thinking that not everything was as bad as it seemed to me yesterday. And it doesn't matter that my father doesn't like me, the main thing is that he exists and that he is alive. I was so carried away by my thoughts that I didn't notice anything around me, and if it weren't for the fox, who shouted, "Bend down," then I would have been hit by a heavy stone thrown by someone at my back. Kurama screamed again. This time he ordered me to run and as quickly as possible if I didn't want to be beaten. And I ran. I haven't run for so long for a long time. My sides were already tingling, and my lungs were burning with fire, but the angry residents did not lag behind and everyone was chasing me, trying to hit me as hard as I could, and if I didn't hit them, then at least throw an offensive word at the last one rushing in the back. Strength to me. I couldn't run anymore. I had no strength left, and, as luck would have it, I ended up in a dead end. Huddled in a corner, covered in shadow, he tried to become as inconspicuous as possible. Please, don't let them notice me. The only thought was beating the alarm bell in my head, but I was unlucky. A drunk man caught up with me and was now blocking the exit from the alley with his massive bulk. I was very scared. I've probably never been so scared. It wasn't death that I was afraid of, because every day I walk on the edge of a cliff. I was afraid that when I finally found a friend, my first friend, I had to say goodbye to him. Don't stand still, stupid child. Call for help. The Ninetales shouted in my head. But, I tried to object that no one cared about me, and it was good if others did not join in my beating. No buts. Call me, otherwise they'll maim you or, worse, kill you. Help. For help. Save. My screams made the man even more furious and attacked me. His kicks and punches seemed to fly from all directions, not allowing me to recover. I fell to the ground and curled up, trying to protect my vital organs and to relieve the pain. Just when I thought that the end had come for me, someone came out from around the corner and the beating stopped. I raised my blurred gaze to my saviors, but saw only the Konoha police bandage on the hand of the person closest to me, who was trying to ask me something. In response, I only mumbled something inarticulate. Consciousness began to slowly leave me. When I woke up, it was deep night outside, and behind the door to my room, the room was clearly not mine, and if you remember what state I was in when the Uchiha patrol officers found me, it's easy to guess that I was sent to the hospital. A voice was heard then, clearly irritated. I hope that the idiot who dared to attack Naruto is no longer in the village. Yes, Hokage-sama, we escorted him beyond the borders of Konoha and made sure that he did not return. Okay, how is he feeling? This was not a question from the Hokage, who is worried about the village's weapons? No, this was a question from a father concerned about his son's condition. Now I was truly happy. This concern said that he did not hate me enough to kill me with his own hands. On the contrary, he was as worried about me as he could. Perhaps he still doesn't understand this himself, but maybe someday he himself will come up and say, "Son, forgive me." And I will forgive him. He has incredible regeneration, he will recover quickly. But the boy's body is too fragile, it will be difficult for him to become a shinobi, answered a voice unfamiliar to me. I see, Dad said, somehow disappointed. How nice and at the same time unusual it is to call someone that. Maybe you want to visit him? He'll come to his senses soon. No, sharply, without thinking for a second, is it really so unpleasant for him to talk to me? I have a lot to do. Okay, goodbye, Hokage-sama. When I heard the front door creak, I immediately pretended to be asleep. The man approached the bed where I was resting, checked some wires, pressed his fingers on my arms, ribs, legs. Probably checking the integrity of the bones. Having finished the examination, the doctor left my room. Now I was left alone with my gloomy thoughts. And they were sad because of my dad's attitude towards me. Don't be upset, the fox's voice rang out in my head, he still blames you, and himself, for her death. I understand, it's just a shame. Boy, you have no time to be sad, I haven't scolded you yet for your simply disgusting physical preparation. If it weren't for the damned Uchiha, who came to your cries in such a timely manner, you would have already been buried, and I would have been in a hurry to be reborn. I feel with my fifth point that he said this for a reason. Now you are putting your house and training ground in order, don't be surprised. I remember very well that there is a very decent training ground adjacent to the mansion, many clans would be jealous. Okay, for some reason I breathed out pitifully. Can you at least eat? You can, Ninetales allowed me complacently. I got out of bed, slightly swaying from side to side, my body was still weak, I pulled my clothes off the chair and slowly, as if mocking Kurama, began to get dressed. But there's no need to push me, I don't like it. All things were torn and covered in street dirt, which made me very upset. Now I need to buy clothes, but there is not much money left, although they give me more than other orphans, but the funds are still not enough. A heavy and melancholy sigh escaped from my chest. Okay, we have to leave. I crawled out through the window onto the street, fortunately it was the first floor. At such a time, very few establishments were open, and, remarkably, almost all of them were for clients who had reached the age of majority or the rank of Chunin. It is clear that I had nothing to do in such places. Walking down the street and starving, I came across a small street restaurant that sold ramen. I don't really like noodles, but I don't have to choose, so I go under the awning and sit at the counter. The owner of the restaurant smiled at me quite friendly and asked what I would order. One miso soup with beef. Please, I asked timidly, afraid that at any moment I might be hit with a ladle or shouted at. Best case scenario. Having eaten quite edible noodles, I thanked the owner of the shop with all my heart, so much so that he was embarrassed. I was absolutely happy, running through the empty streets of Konoha. These couple of days were definitely special and quite happy, if you do not take into account the fact that I was almost sent to my forefathers twice. Yesterday I met Kurama and found a friend in him. I also found out who my parents are. Today I realized that Dad doesn't hate me so much. I met a kind man who not only does not hate, but also spoke to me quite affably. And lastly, Kurama promised to train me. That's it, so stop chilling and run home, do the cleaning, and start training tomorrow. Going. I sped up and made it home in 30 minutes. Still, the house is on the outskirts. In the few hours of my absence, nothing has changed, there is no end to the work. Finding a bucket in the bathroom on the first floor, I poured detergent and water into it, threw in a rag, wrung it out, and rushed to wash the kitchen floors. having somehow washed them. Without even starting to clean up the dust, I managed to get exhausted. Now sitting at the table I tried to catch my breath. Yes, physical training leaves much to be desired. Okay, I'll help you, otherwise at this rate you'll only be able to handle the cleaning by spring, the fox interrupted my gloomy thoughts. Now we are going to teach the technique, shadow cloning, but promise that until you properly prepare your body, you will use no more than 3 clones. Okay, despite the fatigue, my mood immediately lifted. I could finally learn something useful. First, the theory. The shadow clone technique is the creation of exact copies, unlike the regular cloning technique, which are not illusions. She was given a B rank. When performing a technique, the shinobi's chakra is evenly distributed among the created shadow clones, the number of which is directly proportional to the initial level of the ninja's chakra. Such copies are unstable. They disappear either after a strong blow or at the request of the original. They also have the ability, after disappearing, to transfer the acquired feelings and knowledge to their creator, which makes them very effective in reconnaissance or learning new techniques, significantly reducing the time spent. However, this is also a disadvantage of the technique, since clones can transfer their fatigue to the creator. Okay, now concentrate on the source chakra. You already know how to sense chakra? I actively nodded in agreement. This is good, but have you tried to use it? Yeah, but how exactly? I tried to concentrate chakra in my legs. And I even managed to climb a tree. I saw how other shinobi do it, I explained for some reason. Wow, you're talented, not bad for 4 years old. Okay, let's continue then. After you concentrate on the source, pass the chakra into your hands, or rather into your fingers, and make a seal. It's not complicated. Just fold your fingers on both hands, leaving only your index and middle fingers straight. And at the end you cross your fingers. Next comes the name of the technique. Now say it out loud, but quietly, and in the future we'll try to say it to ourselves. Oh yes, don't forget to mentally imagine the number of clones. Well, what can I say, the first pancake is always lumpy. So what I got was not an exact copy of myself, but something inanimate and slightly blurred. The fox laughed for a long time. He still chuckles. What a bastard, it would be better to help, and not laugh at my failures. Imagine your appearance more accurately, or better yet, stand in front of the mirror and get started. It will help you the first time, and then it will automatically work out for you. Thank you, I muttered. Having found a half-human height mirror in the bathroom, I stood opposite and tried again. This time it turned out much better. At least the clone that appeared did not blur, as if on the waves, but held its shape, but was just as dead. So, half an hour passed during training, and after this time I finally got a real clone. Having done a couple more, I gave instructions to everyone. 2 worked on the first floor, and 2, including me, on the second floor. I got an office and 1 room. I started cleaning the bedroom. The once beautiful room with a luxurious bed, 2 armchairs, a coffee table and a shelf for books was now in no better condition. No, the furniture was completely intact, only finger-thick deposits of dust were present on all surfaces. Armed with a mop, a bucket and a few rags, I began cleaning. It took me about 2 hours. I didn't want to sleep, so I slept almost the whole day. When I finished cleaning the room, I didn't recognize her. He did a good job. Now the bedroom didn't really shine. Next in line was the office. Once inside, I started cleaning. The office was, in my opinion, the most ordinary. The room had a large, even comfortable-looking, wooden table. There was also a chair, a sofa, a coffee table and a huge cabinet for books and scrolls, but it was completely empty, except for the dust that was in abundance throughout the room. When I got to the empty bookshelves, I accidentally bumped into something sharp, which caused me to cut myself badly, and then, as I was falling, I pressed on some protrusion. "Let go of the chakra," said the fox with undisguised excitement. Well, I let him in as ordered. Click, and the shelf is covered with seals that light up scarlet. Another click, and the shelf slides to the side. A large, one might even say huge, room appears to my surprised gaze, lined with ceiling-mounted shelves filled with all kinds of scrolls and books. To those who study in order to develop known views, books and studies serve simply as steps on a ladder along which they ascend to the pinnacle of knowledge. The majority, who study only to fill their memory, do not use the steps to climb, but collect and shoulder them. They always remain below, because they carry on themselves that which should lift them up. Author Arthur Schopenhauer. Wow! Yes, this is the Uzumaki clan library. The fox whistled admiringly. Look, there are the seals of the first circle, and half the shinobi in the world will be ready to give their last kunai to get one. And if you also learn how to create fuin yourself and apply seals, for a second it seemed to me that Kurama dreamily raised his red eyes to the ceiling of my subconscious. I also began to look around the library. And to be honest, I liked what I saw. Calm beige walls, which have not yet lost their original color over all the years of their service. Wooden shelves, smelling of knowledge, filled with all kinds of books and scrolls, reached the ceiling. And there was a ladder attached to one of the bookcases, which had probably been in use for decades. The gaze involuntarily stops at a massive table with carved legs, littered with sheets and scrolls covered in neat, even handwriting. A wooden chair with a soft back covered in red velvet was pushed towards him. And there was also a real board for notes with chalk. I only saw these at the Shinobi Academy, however, they were much larger there. The ticking of the clock hanging above the desk can be heard throughout the library. The black arrow inexorably counts down the time remaining for life. The clock is not afraid of either the years or the weather outside the window. It will only continue to tick, measuring seconds, minutes, hours, followed by days, months, years. They will run and count until the charge in their mechanical hearts runs out. Probably what struck me most in this room were the softly glowing turquoise crystals suspended from the ceiling. As soon as my foot crossed the threshold of the library, they lit up at once, filling the entire room with diffused light. Even in the most secluded corner there was no shelter for shadow. I couldn't help but want to look a little more at this magical library. She instilled warmth in me and some hope for a miracle. Most likely, it's all about the atmosphere of wisdom and knowledge, or maybe it's all about the silence that has covered the whole room like a cocoon. It was unprecedented for me, but confidence in a good future settled deep in my soul. Then you'll stop looking at it, you'll still have time. Now we should finish cleaning up, Kurama announced to me. Kurama, why wasn't this library emptied? After all, I saw that on the shelves in the office there were characteristic traces of dust, as if from scrolls and books. I asked with interest. It's simple. On the library there is one of the best developments of your clan. Thanks to it, more than one eye of the Uchiha and Hyuga clans will not see anything. And they won't be able to hack anything that isn't visible. To do this, you need to be at least a fuin master no worse than your mother, but such masters, as you understand, no longer exist. In addition, your mother improved the barrier by tuning it beyond Uzumaki's blood and chakra to my chakra. I can feel it. It took me a few more hours to complete the cleaning, and, to be honest, my body ached mercilessly. This is the first time I've been doing something for so long. On the advice of Kyubi no Yoko, I decided to dispel the clones only when I went to bed. And it was a very wise decision. I made just one hand seal to cancel the technique, and darkness covered me completely. Only some pictures flashed in the already switched-off brain. The morning began with the Nine-Tails shouting that it was time to get up. I tried to get away with the standard phrase that half of the orphanage children used, another 5 minutes, but it didn't work with Fox. So I had to get up and, on weak legs, trudge to the bathroom. My head was pounding and my eyes felt like sand had been poured into my eyes. He made his way to the sink, and somehow opened his watery eyes and looked into the mirror. What I saw there made me involuntarily shudder. The freshly dug-up corpse even looked more beautiful than me. Black circles under the eyes, like a panda's, and the eyes themselves are crimson, like blood. The face is pale and swollen. In general, handsome. "You're such a weakling, Naruto," Kurama commented on my condition. "What if there were 5 clones? Would you already be flying to meet Rikudo?" My friend was still grumbling displeasedly. Involuntarily I imagined all this to myself. Here I am crawling with a rag in my hands and a bucket in my teeth, now I am cancelling the shadow cloning technique and that's it. Then there is only drama. Yes, a sad end for the infamous Jinchuriki of Konoha. Okay, let's go have breakfast, you have a busy schedule today. First breakfast, then training consisting of endurance running and flexibility exercises and initial taijutsu training. Taijutsu? Taijutsu is the art of close combat without weapons, the art of maintaining a healthy body. Taijutsu includes almost all known groups of techniques, punches and kicks, painful holds, throws, choking, and so on. Embodies the traditions of more than 1,000 years of development of the art of shadow warriors. As far as I know, taijutsu does not require hand seals, but chakra control is required. These techniques use only the body. With the help of taijutsu, the strength and speed of a shinobi increases many times over. That's right, but I haven't finished yet and don't interrupt me. So where did I stop there? Oh yes, taijutsu. So, then you have lunch, rest, that is, reading the scrolls of the Uzumaki clan library, and, finally, dinner, after which another training session will follow, practicing Tai elements. Can I do all this? I ask uncertainly. Where are you going? Kurama answered the question with a question. Okay, Kurama-sensei. Sensei? Well, I like it. I had no choice but to go down and stomp for breakfast. As always, noodles. The entire meal, however, left no memories. I didn't even taste the food. It's sad, but I didn't have any other food in my house. An elderly woman with a bad character, who is a housekeeper, unfortunately, does not bother herself with cooking and cleaning. At least during the 2 months of my residence here, she has never deigned to fulfill her duties. At best, she left processed foods in the freezer and dry noodles on the kitchen shelves. And I myself tried once again not to catch her eye. I remember when she first came to my house, I ran up to her with a joyful smile, wanting to say hello and get to know each other. But I only came across a look full of hatred. Every time she looked at me, I wanted to go drown myself, so as not to stain with my presence the ground on which normal people walk, and not monsters like me. I think that's what she was telling her friend. The only good thing is that she comes to see me no more than 2 or 3 times a week. But if I felt her free will, she would never appear to me at all. Yes, and I think I'm also glad when she's gone, I don't have to leave home, risking running into another person who wants to show the demon his place. After I finished, Kyubi drove me to the training ground, saying that it was not far from here. I first walked along a wide road, then went out onto a path through dense thickets of trees, until the 9 tails in my head began to give out further valuable instructions. Freeze, yeah, there should be a tree here somewhere, look to the right. I obediently looked around, and indeed to my right, about 40 meters away, stood a spreading tree, standing out qualitatively against the background of its green counterparts. On Kurama's advice, I scratched my hand and, with my bloody palm, threw the glass into the tree trunk. For several minutes nothing happened. I already thought that this was the wrong tree, or that I had done something wrong. But 3 minutes later, the space in front of me sparkled with golden light with red flashes. The golden wall blinked for some time until an empty space appeared in the form of an arch. After hesitating a little at the entrance, I finally crossed the border, and literally immediately the barrier slammed shut behind me. I was already starting to panic, but Lise was able to calm me down with just 3 words. Having recovered from my excitement, I decided to look around. That was incredible. Once upon a time, inspired by curiosity, I, constantly hiding and lurking, made my way to one training site, and therefore, I knew approximately what it should look like. This training ground was unlike anything I had ever seen before. There was nothing unusual in those training fields scattered throughout Konoha. An ordinary empty piece of land, fenced with forest around and 3 wooden stumps in the middle of the site, that's all that was there. This same clearing amazed with its enormous size. Also in front, in several rows, were real training dummies with painted lethal and painful points. To the left of the entrance there was a shelf filled with scrolls of all sizes and a bench 3 steps away from it. And on the right there was some strange structure with logs, ropes, or completely closed places. And all this procession went deep into the forest thickets. You don't have to look to the right, it's too early for you to even think about the barrier line, Kurama-sensei said in his subconscious. Somewhere nearby I could hear the murmur of water, which could not leave me indifferent. This should be interesting. Quickening my pace, I followed the sound. So, getting to the water, I walked past a small area fenced with a barrier. After asking Kyubi, I learned that this is a special small training ground for sparring. And then I finally reached the cliff. Below, shimmering in the sun, a silver river flowed. It flowed like a snake, burying small pebbles under its powerful body and skirting large boulders. The enchanting sound was made by a small waterfall, which, falling down, created the feeling that millions of diamonds were flying from the top. Kurama-sensei, does anyone else know about this place besides us? I asked the question that was occupying my mind. No, only Mito and the first, the creators of this place, knew about this training ground, and also your mother, although Kushina preferred to train with Minato at other training grounds. Besides, she never brought him here, didn't even tell him about it, although it seems to me that she herself forgot about him. By the way, here you can talk to me out loud, without fear that someone will be able to hear or see you. Mito, who is this? And what did they teach you? Fox was indignant. Nothing, I grumbled offendedly. Okay, listen. Uzumaki Mito was once the harem of the Uzumaki clan, but in order to strengthen ties between the villages she was forced to marry Hashirama from the Senju clan, who soon became one of the founders of the Hidden Leaf village and its first leader, the first Hokage. During Hashirama's battle with Uchiha Madara in the Valley of the End, when the Senju at a certain point gained control over me, Mito decided to help the village and her husband, so she used Fuinjutsu to seal me in her body, thus she became my first Jinchuriki. What happened next? And then, even despite all the power of this seal, it practically broke during Mito's birth. But, even despite the deplorable state of the press, she tried to restrain me until the very end. Well, I hope I don't need to tell you about Hashirama Senju? No, I know about him. So, stop relaxing, let's pick up our feet and go 10 laps. Kurama-sensei commanded, urging me on with a wave of demonic chakra throughout my body and a small surge of ki. I had no choice but to blow myself up and start a long-distance race. My strength was only enough for 4 laps. After which I fell on the grass, gasping for air, and remembering the day when I fell into my subconscious. Why are you lying down? You have 6 more laps, climb. The fox did not let up. Jumping up, I trudged off to run the remaining laps. On the 3rd, I was already falling again, but Yoko was not pleading and I had to run 3 more, after which I could no longer not only run, but walking was a feat for me. After giving me 10 minutes to rest, Kurama began to scold me about my disgusting preparation. And in order not to waste time, he suggested that I try to speed up the flow of chakra in the body a little, which is what I was doing now. After resting a little and moving my chakra through the channels, which now made me feel even worse than after running, the sensei began to twist me. What kind of twists and turns he forced me to do, so that, as he put it, to make a rope out of a log, it's even scary to remember. Finally, after 4 hours, my torment was over, and the fox allowed me to leave for lunch. Hearing about the cherished word, my stomach muttered something indignant, making me embarrassed. Kurama-sensei, are there techniques that change appearance? Remembering that I was barred from entering the store, but I didn't want to eat ramen again. Said the fox thoughtfully. There is such a technique, the transformation technique, an elementary ninjutsu of rank E, with which you can transform yourself into another object. To create it you need to fold 3 hand seals. Do you know them by the way? Yes, but I'm not very good at them and very slowly. It's okay, we're not in a hurry. So first try to make hand seals without supplying chakra, and then, when I can make sure that I did everything correctly, feed it too. So, remember, dog bore Aries. I just nodded my head and began to diligently twist my fingers. Thank Kami that the fox allowed me to make seals while sitting, otherwise my legs were very tired after the executions of the kyubi. So, first I'm trying to get the hand stamp dog correct, it seems to be correct. Then boar, here too everything worked out for me, but with Aries, I had to tinker, but after half an hour this print came out, if not perfectly, then well. Having passed the standard for hand seals to Kurama-sensei, and having received approval, I decided to try to apply chakra in a seal. I even closed my eyes with excitement. For some reason, the image of my father's advisor, the former third Hokage, popped into my head, but I didn't pay attention to it. After the technique was supposed to have worked, I opened my eyes and checked myself, nothing seemed to have changed. I wondered, how can I check that the technique has passed? There is a small lake downstream, Kurama's voice rang out in my head. I had to stomp around to look for this very lake. It turned out to be not that far. I found it almost immediately, I only received a few hints from Fox. It turns out that another waterfall flows into the mirror water of the lake with a poetic name, Generosity, and the name of the lake itself, Crystal. The Ninetales told me this. And now I'm already standing on the shore of the lake and peering into the surface of the water, and Kyubi is laughing inside me. Apart from some differences, I was very similar to the old advisor, Sarutobi Hiruzen. My eyes became quite narrow in shape with small dark pupils, and there were many deep wrinkles under them. There was a small beard growing on his chin. And on the head there are white graying hairs. In addition, 2 large moles have formed on the left cheek. He was dressed in a black kimono with gray trim, and had open black sandals on his feet. But the fact that I was Hiruzen is not scary and not even a reason for Kurama's laughter. Most likely, the reason was that I had not quite successfully transformed, and now my whole face was a little crumpled, my lips rather resembled 2 large red cakes. And my transformation obviously didn't turn out to be a sprout, and now I was a kind of disproportionate dwarf, somewhat vaguely similar to the former Hokage. Oh, I can't. Ha ha ha, I'll probably never forget this sight. It's even cooler than your first clones. Kyubi almost smeared happy tears over the soft fur on his face. Just look at the lips. Ha ha ha. This spectacle simply begs to be immortalized. Naruto, remember this image, we will eliminate our opponents without removing the kunai from our pouch. Just think, it didn't work out a little, it doesn't happen to anyone. And you immediately laugh, I pouted. Okay, this is certainly fun, hee hee, but you can't walk around the village with a henge like that, the fox said, grunting a little more with laughter. And it's better to start, just not change your appearance too much. For example, change your hair color, eye color, remove the stripes on your cheeks, they are the most noticeable on you, you can even change your gender just to be sure. I'm going to try now. I again made several hand seals and imagined that the color of my hair was changing to gold, braided into 2 funny ponytails, my eyes were turning green, and stripes were leaving my cheeks. Having finished the transformation, I looked back into the lake. This time it was better, only the image was a little blurry, but after another dozen attempts I succeeded. Not bad, you didn't even need to turn into a girl and you look so much like her with those ponytails, Kyubi no Yoko summed up complacently. Now let's go shopping. It was really worth hurrying, otherwise after the word store, my stomach made another indignant gurgle, hinting that it would be nice to fill it up, which is what I went to do, leaving the training ground. From the moment we are born, we are drawn to form alliances with others. An unchanging craving for friendship, for love, for understanding. In an ideal union we find a strength that we cannot find in ourselves, but the strength of the union cannot be realized until you experience it. Revenge. I intended to go to the market. In theory, it is a little cheaper there than in regular stores. To be honest, today will be my first time there. Previously, I was afraid to appear in such crowded places, but being near Hang, I had a chance to go unrecognized and buy everything I needed. Just a little more and I'll reach the main road. I held my breath, as if I were about to jump into water. Now it was being decided whether I could walk around the village calmly or not. He hesitantly stepped onto the road, ready to take off at any second. I look around, people calmly walk around me, not really paying attention. And I stand there and can't believe that everything worked out for me. "Girl, are you lost?" A male voice comes from behind, making you jump in fear. I turn around timidly. Standing behind him is an obese man, with small pig-like black eyes swimming under his thick cheeks. I remember this man, he is a baker from a bread shop. He often shouted at me and called me bad names, sometimes he could even swing at me. I was afraid of him, and it was all the more surprising now to look at his kind eyes and light smile. "No, my mother sent me to the market to buy groceries for home. She says that I'm already big and if I want to become a good kunoichi, I have to be the most self-sufficient," he lied without thinking. "What she says is correct," the man nodded importantly. "Well, then go, the market is not far, around that corner." "Thank you," I shouted and decided to quickly run away. As soon as I ran around the corner, I leaned against the stone wall of the house. My heart was pounding in my chest. Did I really succeed, and now I can walk around Konoha in peace? With these thoughts, I was able to calm myself down a little, and with a wide smile, I headed to the first shops in order to purchase the necessary products. Of course, I didn't know how to cook yet, but Kurama said that he knew a little and could help me. I ran from one kiosk to another like a little tornado. I looked at the vegetables, carefully chose meat and fish, and tried fruits. People looked at me with smiles and approval. For the first time I saw something other than hatred in people's eyes, and I liked it. Previously, I despised and hated all these people, in response to their hatred, fear and the pain that they brought me. Now I understood that they were simply weak people who despised everyone who was stronger than them, hated what they did not understand. They hurt the one they fear. And I stopped judging them. I just realized that people are two-faced, you can't believe or trust them, they have a huge number of masks, which they change without hesitation a dozen times a day. What struck me most was that my modest means, which previously were only enough for one small piece of meat and a half-rotten apple, turned out to be enough, and there was still a little left. With such joy, I was able to afford to buy a few balls of delicious dango on a stick when I returned home. Arriving home, I immediately unloaded all my shopping bags onto the table. And I began to think about what to do with all this. I had never cooked before, and now I stood hesitantly near the table, shifting from foot to foot. "Don't stand still," I remember somewhere here in Kushina's kitchen, there was a stack of books with recipes, "Look in that closet over there." "Yes, in the one on the bottom left." "Well done, now pull it out," the Ninetales gave valuable instructions. "Now open it to the table of contents, we'll choose what to cook." "Oh, chicken in the oven, that must be delicious." "What page is there?" 35th? "So, open it and start reading." Under the strict guidance of Kyubi, he began to cook. First, I marinated a small chicken, more like chicken, in various seasonings and herbs. Then I put it in the refrigerator for a few minutes, which I turned on yesterday and began to deal with the products, loading them into the cold chamber. After all the food was neatly placed on the refrigerator shelves, I turned on the oven to preheat, took out the chicken, cut the apple and stuffed the bird. Then the chicken was placed in the oven and I sat down to wait. And how long are you going to wait? Kurama-sensei was curious. It says 2 hours. Oh, that's right, 2. I perked up, realizing why the fox asked me. If I wait all this time, then I have the opportunity to die of hunger. Having quickly snacked on vegetables and fruits, I ran to the library in search of something to read. My choice fell on several scrolls. The first one had the name, Chakra. Initial exercises for children of the Uzumaki clan, and the second scroll was called, Fuin. Basic concepts. So I sat in the kitchen, reading the scrolls, until the nine-tails screamed in my head. It turns out that the chicken has been ready for about 20 minutes, and if what I want to eat is not coal, then I should hurry. I don't know how the fox understood that the meat was ready, but I trusted him. Grabbing the grips, he rushed to pull them out. As soon as I opened the oven, the pleasant spicy smell of chicken hit my nose. I even started salivating. Although I was not too hungry, such a delicious aroma will not leave anyone indifferent. I quickly cut off a chicken leg and dug my teeth into it, squinting happily with pleasure. Oh, it's been so long since I've eaten, Kurama howled sadly. How did you not eat it? How could you live so long then? Naruto, I'm made almost entirely of chakra, I don't really need food. But they eat not only for satiety, but also for pleasure, I declared authoritatively. Can I make it so that you can also taste the food when I eat? You can also try. So, finish eating, grab a couple of apples and go to the training ground or the library, we'll try it. I quickly threw the dishes into the sink, covered the baking tray with the bird with a large lid, grabbed a few apples and rushed to the landfill, not forgetting to grab that couple of scrolls. Is it just me or did the road to the training ground take much less time this time than last time? Although maybe the whole point is that I was running now? Most likely, this is true. Finally I crossed the boundary of the site, and bent in half, breathing heavily. Having evened out my breathing a little, I went to the bench I liked, almost at the very border. From this bench there was a beautiful view of the cliff and the Nadezhda Falls falling into it. And at the very bottom, the crystal-clear river attracted my gaze and fascinated me with its shimmering reflections. Then you'll stop looking at it, now come down here and we'll experiment. I wanted to ask, how can I do this, but I didn't have time, because they jerked me sharply, and everything went dark before my eyes. The very next minute I felt that I was in a dark tunnel, and water was dripping from the ceiling, echoing in my head. A small layer of water sways along the floor like rockets of small waves, spreading away from me in circles. Without wasting another second, I stood up and walked towards the light of the fire chakra. A few minutes later I was standing in a large hall, which ended with a golden gate open wide to the very ceiling. And in the depths lay a giant nine-tailed demon fox, fanning itself with these very tails. It's been a long time. I didn't expect you to pull me out this way, I said grumpily. Okay, stop wailing, better concentrate, now we will change your consciousness. And the fox pointed with his tail at one of the grates, and then at the second and at the floor below him. What should I write? I'm ready. First, give me your hand here. I obediently extended my limb and at the same second hissed, feeling a sharp pain on it. Be patient. Okay, now let's draw. He sobbed a little more in pain. What's strange is that the pain went away quite quickly, now I almost didn't feel it. And then I began to paint hieroglyphs on the golden rods with my blood, then moved to the floor and wrote there, under the strict guidance of Kurama. In order for there to be enough blood, I had to wound my hands 3 more times. But the wounds healed quickly and without a trace. That's it, I proudly proclaimed, looking at my handiwork. A bloody pattern of symbols was drawn across the sand marble on the floor and the golden gratings: eyes, vision, ears, hearing, tongue, taste, nose, smell, and skin, touch. I watched in fascination as the drawings began to burn with a red flame. They either flash brightly right up to the ceiling, then calm down, caressing under your feet. Beautiful. Realizing that I had already seen enough of the result of our shamanism, Kyubi no Yoko kicked me out of my own consciousness. And then his voice rang out, causing me to flinch. If earlier I heard him as if through water or cotton wool, now I had the feeling that he was standing a millimeter away from me. Remembering where it all began, I picked up my backpack and closed it in search of apples. Oh, I think I found it. Now I need to try it. I took a small, juicy bite of fruit and chewed it thoroughly, feeling the sour juice flowing across my tongue. Well, how? I couldn't resist asking the question as soon as I chewed the apple to the end. This long-forgotten taste of food, the nine-tail said purringly. Okay, let's go home. I still won't refuse to try that chicken. But I only recently ate. You ate it, and I'm hungry, for 80 years, after all. Let's go, I sigh heavily. After an unplanned meal, which I considered dinner, I sat comfortably in the library, with a scroll in my hands. On my first visit, I never noticed the soft sofa hidden behind the shelves, but now I found it and now use it comfortably. From the initial knowledge scroll of Fuin. In short, Fuinjitsu or the sealing technique is a special type of technique that is intended for sealing any objects, living beings, as well as large amounts of chakra. Fuinjitsu can also be used to print the above-mentioned objects. I also learned about the existence of such incredible sealing techniques as Shizetsu Fuin, sealing things. In turn, this seal is also divided into levels of complexity and according to the number of things sealed. It is written here that Master Fuin can even seal people with such a seal, and even houses. There are also healing seals of Shichechi Fuin. But there are also divisions here. For example, there are healing scrolls of rank D, so the maximum they are capable of is healing minor scratches and not deep cuts. In turn, S-rank seals are capable of almost raising the dead, which already makes such knowledge incredibly valuable. And a huge number of stamps for every day. Various barriers, paralyzing seals, elemental Fuin. Blocking seals, Fuin for penetrating someone else's consciousness, for reading and closing thoughts, expanding space. Such prospects involuntarily made me feel dizzy. This is how much can be done. While reading in the library, I didn't notice that evening had already come, and the fox had been trying to reach me for several minutes, but it seemed to be unsuccessful. Although he still managed to distract me from knowledge. Incredible. Let's go to the training ground. You have an evening training session as planned. Okay, I muttered quietly, sliding off the sofa and feeling my legs pinching. It seemed that I had served such a long period of immobility. Having hobbled to the training ground, I was sent on another run around the training ground. And again, after the fourth circle, I was ready to fall exhausted on the ground that had warmed up during the day. But who will give me such luxury? Therefore, you have to run, no matter what happens. Don't relax, you still have 5 laps. Ninetails urged me. And I had to run, and only after I ran the last lap did Kurama let me catch my breath. Then he advised me to practice exactly 3 basic taijutsu stances, which I obediently tried to do under the strict guidance of Kyubi. The day was coming to an end, the sun was slowly setting below the horizon, taking with it all the troubles of the day. The sky was darkening, and the waning moon proudly floated across its expanses, taking with it a flock of cheerful star friends for company. My training for today was coming to an end, but I was sure that tomorrow morning, with the first rays of the bright sun, I would already be running to this training ground to become stronger. Probably someone will ask, why do you need power? And I will be ready to answer, to protect what is dear to me. Tell me, Phoebe, what would you like for your birthday? I want my mother to come to life and celebrate it with me. Friends. It was early morning. The civilians of Konoha were just waking up to open their shops in the morning. As for the shinobi, many of them were no longer sleeping at that time. Some stood at the main gate of Konoha, waiting for the customer, while others hurried to the Hokage to receive a new mission. So 11-year-old Itachi hurried to the carpet, to the Hokage. He was assigned to the ANBU just a month ago. His father, like other members of the clan, was very proud of him, and his brother, Sasuke, was especially admired and even envied. They were already waiting for him at the residence and immediately escorted him to the Hokage's office. The secretary quietly knocked on the door and received permission to enter. The woman only nodded to the teenager at the entrance and left. "Hello, Hokage-sama," Itachi bowed. "Ah, Itachi-kun," Minato, as always, had a pleasant smile on his face, but this time the man's fatigue was noticeable. "Come in. I have a mission for you." "Yes." But for some reason Namikaze hesitated further. He got up from the table, went to the window from which he could see the whole of Konoha, ruffled his blonde hair with a nervous movement, sighed, and looked at the guy with some sick eyes. Now it was very difficult for him to gather his thoughts and give this task. But he knew that this candidate would be much better than many others, and therefore, pulling himself together and taking another tired sigh, he began to speak. "You will have to follow Uzumaki Naruto for some time, most likely until he enters the academy. This is a little over a year. Look at his," Minato paused, searching for words, "at his physical condition. Am I allowed to make contact with the object?" Itachi clarified busily. "As a last resort. You will begin the mission tomorrow. Details are in this folder." Minato handed over the mentioned item. "Free," the fourth finished confidently. Itachi nodded and literally disappeared from the office. And the Hokage, left alone, thought deeply. Minato's soul had been uneasy lately. For a week now he had been tormented by nightmares and a bad feeling, a premonition of danger, but for some reason he was sure that this something bad would not happen to him. At first the man thought about Kakashi, since the only people left close to him were him, Jiraiya and Naruto. He even lowered the rank of missions for his former student, but then, after a few days, he realized that it was not him, but someone else, who was in danger. As for the sensei, Minato was calm for him. He was strong enough to fend for himself. Therefore, only Naruto remained. Little Uzumaki was defenseless. He realized this at the moment when he was informed that even if Naruto could become a shinobi, the maximum he could achieve was Chunin, and then a very average one. As the Iranians claimed, he has osteoporotic changes in his bones, and his overall level of physical fitness is half the normal level. The fourth was disappointed. Yes, this word perfectly described his condition. This child was outwardly a small copy of Kushina, but at the same time he was the complete opposite of her in character, meek and shy. Naruto couldn't even say anything against his offenders. Uzumaki did nothing but run and hide from everyone. The man kept asking himself, "Is this my son?" and received an uncomforting answer, "Yes." But no matter how much he hates him, no matter how much he blames him for the death of his wife, and no matter how disappointed he is, this child is still his blood, and he will be the last bastard if he leaves him in danger, knowing about it in advance. And then the question arose, who should entrust such a task? He dismissed Chunin and Jonin immediately. The ANBU remained, but they had enough of their own tasks. On the contrary, there were not enough people to carry out all the missions. Some had been working for 6 months without days off, and almost one by one completing A-rank tasks. Minato spent a long time and concentratedly turning over all the candidates for the role of Naruto's guard in his head, until he suddenly remembered the recently appointed ANBU. This man was his friend's eldest son. Once upon a time, when he was only 14, and Fugaku was not yet the head of his clan, they got along well and often went on joint missions. But their real male friendship began when Kushina decided to introduce only the appointed Hokage to her friend. Uzumaki's friend turned out to be Uchiha Mikoto, the wife of Fugaku, who had already become the head of the Uchiha clan. Kushina often complained that Miko-chan, as she called Mikoto in a friendly manner, was too soft with her husband, and in addition, she did not treat him at all. As for Minato, he was quietly jealous of the man, right up until the moment Mikoto got really angry with her husband. It was then that Fugaku howled like a wolf, but still endured it. He loved her very much. It was on this basis that they became friends. After getting drunk in a tavern until they were green yukai, they complained about their wives and fate in general, and then, just as smoothly, they ran away and hid from their enraged other halves. Minato sighed, thoughts flowing back to Itachi. But once Kushina even expressed a desire to teach her eldest son Fugaku the basics of Fuin, and as she said, he even succeeded in doing something. He did not become a master of seals, but he learned to remove weak barriers. And then another not very pleasant thought overtook him. No, even then, a little over 5 years ago, it made him smile slightly, but now, these were painful memories. When Kushina became pregnant, she almost registered at the Uchiha estate, and often communicated with Mikoto and Itachi. At that time, and almost until the birth itself, the Irenans unanimously asserted that they would have a girl. Which is why his wife got it into her head that Itachi would be a great groom for her daughter. Of course, the fourth tried to somehow object, but who would listen to him? And he was openly afraid to go against his wife. Pregnant women have a very unstable mood, and Uzumaki is like that in triplets. They even managed to draw up a marriage contract with the head of the Uchiha clan. The Hokage shook his head decisively. Something was clearly leading him in the wrong direction. After all, he started out saying that Itachi was simply perfect for guarding his child. Firstly, he is an ANBU, which means the information will not go beyond his office. Secondly, strong enough to protect Naruto from both a townsman and a jonin, of course, not the strongest, but still a jonin. Besides, he is his wife's student and he respected her. And, as far as Minato understood, he did not suffer from prejudices. Having thought about all this, the man imperceptibly relaxed and began looking through the papers again. Almost a whole year has passed since I first entered my subconscious and met Kurama. Today I will be 5 years old. And Kurama sighs mysteriously for several days, hinting at a special birthday gift. And no matter how many times I asked him what he would give me, he only remained even more mysteriously silent. So I had to accept ignorance and wait for the evening. During this year, I began to study the basics of Fuin, although for the most part it consisted of calligraphy training, and constant attempts to improve chakra control, in which the fox actively helped. And from ninjutsu I only learned substitution. I also learned that I had already awakened 2 whole elements, wind and lightning. Although Kurama says that over time I will be able to use all the elements, but for now I still have to suffer from mastering these 2. In all my teachings, clones help me a lot. The fox still doesn't allow me to do more than 3, but they are enough for me to leave 1 to read scrolls and books in the library, send the 2nd to master one of the elements, and put the 3rd to bed so as not to lose consciousness every time after dispelling the clones. Also, throughout all this time, Kyubi did not leave my morning and evening torture, training. And now I was no longer running 10 laps, but 25. Of course, not at once, with breaks, but after that he no longer looked like a corpse. Now I'm rushing around the kitchen, preparing my holiday table. It's a pity that I have no one to call. Only maybe Kurama, but he can't get out of me, but at least he can try everything I cook, and he'll even give me a gift. My first gift. It's a pity that Dad never forgave me. I sigh heavily again, and then shake myself sharply. Today I will not be sad, because this is my holiday. An uncertain smile appears on my lips, and with renewed enthusiasm I continue to whip up the cream for the birthday cake. I think I'm going to have the best birthday in the world today. I can feel it. The pleasant smell of baking spread throughout the room, which made me jump, remembering the cakes in the oven. Oh, they're about to burn. I jump out of my seat and run to the oven, grabbing oven mitts as I go, pulling out the hot shortcakes. In the end I still got a little burned. It's okay, after 2 hours there won't be a trace left. It's strange, but Kyubi hasn't responded since yesterday. I hope he's okay. Don't get distracted, otherwise something will burn again. So, what else do you need? I take the list from the table and begin to read it carefully, at the same time crossing out what is already ready. Rice with peas and noriya, ready. Zosui with seafood, prepared. By the way, for this dish I had to use an adult's henge, since sake is added to this soup. I wouldn't cook such a dish, but Kurama really asked for it, so I had to cook it. Chicken wings and batter, I'm crossing them out. Cake, all that remains is to spread the cream and put it in the refrigerator. All that's left is the sake kavasarada salad. I don't have raspberry tabiko caviar. I knew that I forgot to buy something yesterday. I quickly make 2 clones, and while handing out tasks, I run into the room to get my wallet. Then, without thinking too much, I use Hank's usual girly approach and run to the market. Itachi's morning, as always, began with the first rays of the sun, but despite the fact that he was a shinobi, he was a little clumsy in the early morning. No, on missions he was always extremely alert, because even a second of delay could cost his life. But all this did not apply to everyday life. When his mind and body felt safe, it was very difficult for him to force himself to fully wake up. The eldest heir of the Uchiha clan yawned widely and somehow dodged the rapidly approaching school. After the contrast shower, Itachi could already say that he had finally woken up. In general, he didn't see the point in getting up so early. The guy watched his brother quite often and could say with confidence that children his age get up quite late if they are not woken up. But the Uchiha decided to arrive early to the little Uzumaki's house in order to inspect the situation, find a convenient place for observation, and besides, he needed to look for possible traps. Of course, the latter was doubtful, but excessive precautions had already saved his life several times. The genius's breakfast didn't take much time, but even under torture he won't remember what exactly he ate in the morning. After all, he wasn't fully awake yet. He had to do a morning warm-up, run the chakra through the channels and take a cold shower again. Now he was definitely ready. Putting on his ANBU uniform, Itachi slowly left the house, not forgetting to grab the folder with data on Naruto. Judging by the documents, the protected object lived 1 block away from them. The folder also contained a brief description of the child. It showed that the child was quiet, calm, melancholy, very modest, and as a shinobi he was unlikely to become outstanding. Nothing special other than the fact that he's a Jinchuriki. Looks like he's going to have a year and a half off. Itachi slammed the folder shut, and, hiding his presence, jumped onto the branch of the nearest tree, only to stumble upon a weak barrier to distract attention. For such a genius as the Uchiha, this barrier was not an obstacle, especially since at one time he was taught by the Fuin master, Uzumaki Kushina. But for sure, even though he lives literally a few steps from the Jinchuriki's house, Itachi never paid attention to this building. But at the same time, he did not set such a goal for himself. The Uchiha did not break the barrier, he simply shrugged off its effect and walked inside its perimeter. First of all, he decided to explore the surrounding area, which, in principle, did not take him much time. The genius of Konoha even managed to select several places for observation. The next thing he decided to do was look at the object of observation, since they forgot to put the photograph in the folder. Itachi quietly crept up to the open window and looked in. No one. What's strange is that the eldest heir of the clan did not see anything with his Sharingan, not a single flow of chakra. The conclusion naturally suggests itself that another barrier has been imposed on the house, only much stronger. So he has to make his way inside. Although a few minutes later, after checking the entire house, the guy was convinced that it was completely empty. And he can't even guess where the child is. He had to return to the observation point and hope that Naruto would appear soon. Take the Biju apart, from the very beginning everything goes down the drain for the Nine Tails. The Hokage will not be happy if he learns of his failure. About 2 hours later, when the Uchiha was about to go to Minato, a very battered observation object fell out of the forest. The guy began to carefully examine the child. Naruto was significantly different even from his brother. Not tall for a 5-year-old, generally frail, a childish round face with stripes on pink cheeks, huge blue eyes, and long scarlet hair, just like Kushina-san. A beautiful child, one might even say cute. The child almost crawled into the house and, without locking the door, went somewhere. A minute later, the murmur of water was heard, most likely Naruto went for a swim. 10 minutes later, the boy finished his water procedures and went to the kitchen, the windows of which overlooked the place where the Uchiha was hiding in the dense crown of a tree. Incredibly, Uzumaki worked quite quickly in the kitchen, preparing himself breakfast. After breakfast, he washed the dishes and took out a book and began to read it. In the next moment, Itachi almost fell out of the tree. It was only thanks to years of training that he was still sitting on the branch instead of lying on the ground. And there was something to be surprised about. In the report that he was given before the mission, they wrote, perhaps indirectly, that the object of observation was a complete mediocrity and a weakling, that he would never become a shinobi. So much for mediocrity. If Naruto is called mediocre, then who are his brother and other 5-year-old children? While the ANBU indulged in his thoughts, the child in the kitchen started a storm of activity, rushing like a small tornado throughout the room, and the clone was no longer visible. I wonder where he sent it? The boy was cooking something, and it must be said that he cooked it well, if not excellently. But where does he need so much food? The guy thought, but for sure, today is the 10th of October. The celebration of the victory over the Nine Tails, and if he remembers correctly, also Naruto's birthday. Itachi began to think, maybe he could give something to the child, since this is his sensei's son. And how could he even forget about today? It wouldn't be good if the little heir of the once great clan went to the festival today. And yesterday, as luck would have it, he promised Sasuke to go for a walk with him in the evening. How is this all at the wrong time? The object of his observation was getting ready to go somewhere at that moment. The boy created 2 more clones, leaving them on the farm, and he, using henge of the golden-haired girl, ran out of the house, heading towards the center of the village. The ANBU had no choice but to follow the Uzumaki. Will you kill me? On your birthday? Do you really think so badly of me? The Vampire Diaries. The sun had already begun to slowly set towards the horizon when I finally finished cooking and sat down at the table to wait for the fox. He never showed up today, although I was really looking forward to congratulations from him. It smells delicious, Kurama said admiringly, suddenly waking up. What are you waiting for? Let's start trying everything already. Don't build. Well, why are you shouting like that? I'm not deaf and I hear everything perfectly, the Nine Tails muttered displeasedly in my subconscious. You haven't spoken to me for a week, and I couldn't get to you, no matter how hard I tried. I was worried, I answered quietly, embarrassed by my words. I prepared a gift for you, now let's eat and go to the training ground, I'll give it to you. I didn't answer, I just smiled even wider and began to eat the festive dishes on both cheeks. I only tried some, ate some completely, but still tried to leave more room for the birthday cake. I tried very hard to prepare the sweets, and I really wanted to blow out the candles on the cake for the first time in my life and make a wish. My birthday was never celebrated in the orphanage, and in general on that day I tried to hide as best as possible so that none of the tipsy teachers would find me. I still had fresh memories of when, at the age of 3, I approached my nanny and asked, "When is my birthday, why isn't it celebrated?" Oh, and then they yelled at me and whipped me with a belt, so that even with Fox's chakra, one small scar on my back still hasn't gone away. The gloomy thoughts involuntarily made me shudder and my soul became very sad. I involuntarily wanted to cry and scream. But I pulled myself back in time and tried to smile, although judging by Kyubi's heavy sigh, I didn't really succeed. Let's burn this village to the ground," suggested the fox. This, in essence, a completely realizable threat, made me smile and wipe away the droplets of moisture that still appeared from my cheeks. "Everything is fine, I have kurama, I have a living father, my own home. Still good." "Well, finally, you smiled, let's blow out the candles and make a wish, I won't even eavesdrop, and then let's go and give you gifts." I quickly lit 5 candles, closed my eyes and blew them all out the first time, and a cherished desire flashed through my head: I want to have the dearest and closest person who would love me with all my shortcomings. "I'm done, let's go." Smiling happily, I jumped out of the chair and ran into the hallway to take a warm sweater. The nights were already cool, and run to the training ground. Consumed from within by irrepressible curiosity. "What did you wish for?" the fox inquired as if by chance. "I won't say it, otherwise it won't come true," I stubbornly pursed my lips, ready to defend secrecy to the last. "I don't think desire is that interesting to me," Kurama said. After the market, where, it turns out, almost all the sellers knew Naruto, Itachi walked his ward, home and, having made a clone, sent him home to cancel the evening trip to the festival with Sasuke. The guy sighed, imagining how angry his brother would be about today, since he had already promised him this evening for a month. Yes, it somehow turned out ugly. For almost the entire time he was watching, Naruto was running around the kitchen, cooking. Sometimes even individual verses from songs that the boy purred under his breath reached the Anbu's sensitive ears. And the child had a rather melodic voice, it would be a pity when it started to break. The guy shook his head vigorously, he was having strange thoughts today. Evening was approaching, Uzumaki had already prepared everything and, having laid out the plates, sat down at the table, quietly saying to himself, "Happy birthday to me," after which he began to eat. Itachi, who was sitting on a tree branch and had only eaten in the morning, sadly accompanied his food with hungry gasses. I should have forgotten the bento, and all because I wanted to leave quickly before my younger brother woke up. At the same time, something strange was happening to the child. He first smiled, then frowned, then got upset and quietly sobbed, only to smile cheerfully and even laugh quietly half a minute later. This is strange. The child blew out the candles and closed his eyes tightly, unconsciously frowning a little, and then smiled happily with all his baby teeth. And the Uchiha noted that a smile suits the boy very well, making him even cuter. After eating just a few spoons of the cake, Naruto jumped out of his chair and rushed out of the house. The Anbu wondered where a child could be rushing so late, especially on a day like this. The guy had a bad feeling. Something would happen today and Itachi assumed that he would not like this something very much. The kid ran towards the forest, and, by the way, it's worth noting that he was fast enough for his age. The guy followed his charge as an invisible shadow. Itachi never understood how this happened, but literally after a few minutes of surveillance, the little Uzumaki suddenly disappeared, as if he had disappeared into thin air. The Uchiha gasped and began scanning the area with his Sharingan. Nothing, at least he thought so, until he accidentally came across a barrier that was powerful in its essence. Probably Kushina-san couldn't have done something like that, not her level of skill. What's strange is that until today he had never noticed him, and probably would never have noticed if it weren't for Naruto, who disappeared out of nowhere. Itachi didn't even think about trying to break into the fence, it would just be a waste of time. And masters of this level have not been alive for a long time. The guy could only watch and hope that his ward would still deign to go outside today. We must remember to tell Hokage-sama about all the oddities of this child, a thought flashed through the Anbu's head. I've been sitting on the platform for several minutes now, waiting for the fox to deign to tell me why we came here. I'm already a little tired of making different assumptions on this matter. I couldn't come up with anything, starting from a banal treasure and ending with my mother's burial place. No one told me where her grave was. I have a very useful gift for you, Kurama began solemnly. My gift will be irreplaceable to you throughout your entire shinobi career. Well, what is this, what? You've been giving me some incomprehensible hints for a whole month and haven't really said anything concrete. I was rightfully indignant. Okay, back in the time of Rikudo Sennin, one jitsu was created. Although no one has used it for many centuries, I remember everything very well. It will allow you to use some of my abilities. Which? I fidgeted impatiently on the bench. You may not know, but I'm an excellent sensor, although I can't fully use my abilities now, since I'm inside you, but I think you can. I also hear the feelings and emotions of people who are close to me. Most likely, now these abilities will bring you a lot of unpleasant moments, but when you grow up, they will provide you with invaluable help. I don't know for sure, but maybe you'll get a little of the flexibility and speed of foxes, or your eyesight, or your sense of smell. Not sure. Wow. I say admiringly and breathlessly. Okay, stop chattering and go to bed. It's late. The sooner we start, the sooner we'll finish. And it can also be very painful. I obediently lay down on the soft grass, afraid that I might fall off the bench, because it was unknown how jitsu would react to me. I lie there, but for some reason nothing happens. Probably 10 minutes have already passed. And then a heat rushed through my entire body, as if someone had poured boiling water on me. The heat kept growing, bringing incredible pain. It seemed that I was burning alive in a fire. Every cell of my body ached. It seemed that someone was systematically breaking, taking out and immediately growing new bones inside. Another portion of the flame passed through the trembling body. I don't know, I'm not sure, but it seems I screamed, tearing my vocal cords and turning into a silent wheeze. He arched at unnatural angles and cried. I have never experienced such sensations before. I was lost in this whirlpool of pain, which replaced my blood and flesh. And it was all the more surprising that all my sensations suddenly subsided, like a wave from a sandy shore. I'm sorry, I heard repentantly in my head, I didn't mean to, I didn't know that it would hurt you so much. With Rikudo, everything was different. Nothing, I thought painfully, because I couldn't speak yet. Let's go home. You shouldn't fall asleep here, you might get sick. Yes. I somehow got up from the already cold ground and trudged home on wobbly legs, barely moving my feet. The body still did not obey well, refusing to function normally. Staggering, I crossed the barrier and trudged home, trying not to fall under some bush along the way. Nothing hurt anymore, but the weakness was simply unbearable throughout my body. How hard it is. I walked without looking at my feet, which is why I constantly stumbled. Everything was double and floating before my eyes, so I was not surprised when I crashed into something. I started to fall back, but at the last moment someone grabbed my hand. Kid, you need to be more careful. The man smelled of relaxation and some kind of fun, but his emotions were somehow cloudy, not bright. I tilted my head back to look at the man. The acrid smell of alcohol hit my nose. The man's face turned from peaceful to furious and hateful in an instant. My entire consciousness was flooded with a frantic flurry of other people's feelings. I began to choke from rage and hatred burning from within. My legs gave way even more, a gray fog swirled in my head, and stars sparkled before my eyes. My lungs suddenly ran out of oxygen, and like a fish thrown ashore, I began to silently open my mouth, hoping to inhale at least a breath of air. It seemed to me that an invisible hand grabbed my heart and squeezed it more and more tightly. A slight tremor ran through my body, and I finally hung in the man's arms. Something wet rolled down my face. Salty. You're a demon, you spawn, the man insulted, and it seemed to me that I was being beaten with a hot iron. Such a creature should not live. Because of you, monster, my little sister died. Do you hear? You are to blame for the death of the child. I felt a heat spread across my cheek and a metallic taste appeared in my mouth. My vision went almost completely dark. I tried to open my mouth to say, it's not me. I am not guilty. I didn't kill anyone, but only a gurgling sound escaped from my throat. It gets dark in my eyes. Fight, don't you dare lose, Kurama's words come through the water. Feelings bubbled up in the shinobi, like a whirlpool they pulled me deeper and deeper. I tried to resist, but it only got worse and I was pulled in even more. Through the haze I saw a man's leg hovering over me. He wanted to kill me, this was clearly visible in his desires. Scary. I don't want to die. Please someone save. I close my eyes tightly, but the pain does not come, and the man's feelings quickly subside. Still afraid, I open my eyes slightly, looking up. The man who previously attacked me stands next to me, looking blank. I follow the direction of the glassy eyes and come across scarlet eyes with 3 volumes in each. A thin guy towered over me, he looked 6 years older than me. Previously red eyes became dark brown, almost black. His long black hair is tied into a low ponytail. His face has strange dark lines running from the inner corners of his eyes to the middle of his cheeks, which is extremely unusual. He was dressed in a special ANBU uniform, with the hilt of a sword peeking out from behind his back. Such pleasant waves of calm and guilt with slight notes of anxiety wafted from this man, which made me incredibly happy. For the first time someone was worried about me, for the first time someone stood up for me, for the first time someone did not hate me. A smile bloomed on its own lips. Thank you, I whispered quietly, on the verge of audibility. Itachi had been sitting on a branch in front of the barrier for 2 hours now and, to be honest, the thought began to occur to him that his ward had long since slipped out from under his nose and was now sleeping peacefully, somewhere. Succumbing to the whisper of an inner voice, he was distracted to create a clone and send it home to Naruto. It was already 1 hour of the night when the returning clone dissipated, bringing him the knowledge that the Uzumaki had nevertheless slipped past him and was now running into trouble in the form of a tipsy shinobi. The guy had a bad feeling, and he broke into a run as fast as possible. Jubi, he still overlooked it. And indeed he made it almost on time. The baby was lying on the ground, curled up, awaiting the beating. Itachi briefly examined the child and made sure that there seemed to be no external injuries, but for some reason the boy did not get up. First of all, the Uchiha decided to remove the threat, and then take a closer look at Naruto. The enemy was eliminated in a matter of seconds, the ANBU simply plunged him into an illusion, and now he is confident that he has dealt with the demon and after the genjutsu subsides he will go home. Feeling an attentive gaze on him, Itachi turned sharply and came across dull blue eyes. Uzumaki looked very unhappy and downtrodden, there were wet streaks from tears on his rosy cheeks, his eyes were clouded with pain, and his whole body was covered in small scratches and bruises. For a moment, the child's gaze cleared and he smiled at the guy with an incredibly bright smile, which greatly surprised the ANBU, and then this quiet, "Thank you." The guy's eyes involuntarily widened in surprise, but he did not give himself the opportunity to stand idle any longer, as the baby's eyes rolled back, and the child himself began to fall to the side. If a person, tormented by a cruel mental storm, frantically resisting the onslaught of unexpected disasters, not knowing whether he is alive or dead, is still able to treat his beloved being with careful care, this is a sure sign of a truly beautiful heart. Victor Hugo. The Man Who Laughs. It was a quiet night, the wind howled angrily, urging the still awake passers-by to return to their homes. The moon today, the only beauty in the sky, somehow winked maliciously, giving a feeling of fear. It seemed to Itachi that even the forest loomed ominously over him. The ANBU involuntarily shrugged his shoulders from the unpleasant sensations. Naruto twitched in the Uchiha's arms, threatening to fall to the ground. Now the guy was faced with the question, where should I take the child? Actually, he had 2 options. The first was to take him to the Konoha hospital, but Uzumaki's injuries were not so extensive, and I remember that Kushina-san's scratches disappeared without a trace in a couple of hours. Therefore, the heir of the great clan decided to use the second option. To take the ward to his home. Besides, it was closer to the Uzumaki house. The journey took the ninja no more than 3 minutes. In the morning, he noticed the location of the baby's room and now carried him there. Having laid Naruto on the bed and taken off his shoes, he covered him with a blanket and was about to leave when small children's fingers squeezed his hand with a strong grip. "Please don't leave," the boy whispered quietly, without opening his eyes, in the corners of which droplets of unshed tears had accumulated. The guy looked at Uzumaki in confusion. Sleeping? Does he talk in his sleep? Quite possible. So what should I do? The Anbu asked himself in confusion. He could remove his hand and leave, but then the child would definitely wake up, which for some reason he did not want. Or he could. Itachi sighed heavily and began to take off his shoes. He wanted to settle down for the night on the floor, but his hand was held tightly and close, and if he slept half-sitting, his whole body would become numb during the night and tomorrow he would be full of pleasant sensations. Looking again at the child's face, the Anbu with one hand removed the pouch with equipment, placing it on the floor next to his shoes and lay down next to the baby. As soon as his head touched the pillow, the child crept closer to him, still not letting go of his hand, and he involuntarily hugged Naruto in a protective gesture. Distantly, the guy thought that Sasuke had not appeared in his bedroom at night for a long time, considering himself an adult. But not even a year had passed before his brother, under the disapproving gaze of his father, ran to him every evening. Somehow, by themselves, the guy's eyelids became heavy and closed. The Uchiha probably fell asleep for the first time so quickly, and that night he was not tormented by nightmares. On the contrary, he dreamed of something light and pleasant. The sleep was bright and sound, something a newly appointed Anbu could very rarely afford. I slowly woke up, my soul was light and calm. A dream suddenly popped into my head about a handsome black-haired Anbu who saved me from a strange, evil man. Anbu was like a prince, handsome and brave. The way he is described in the fairy tales that I loved to read in the orphanage. Smiling at my thoughts, I pressed myself harder against something warm. Warm? Instantly, the last crumbs of sleep fell from me, and I opened my eyes, looking into the face of my prince from a dream. So it wasn't a dream? How handsome he is, or maybe he really is a prince. After all princes must be beautiful, brave, strong, courageous and smart. Hesitantly, I reached out my hand to touch the unusual stripes on the face of my savior. I almost touched it, but my hand was intercepted. What have I done? We are complete strangers, now he will consider me arrogant and ill-mannered. I feel like my face is starting to glow with shame. Sorry, tears began to well up in my eyes. Well, what have I done? Now he won't want to see me anymore. Why would he be friends with such an arrogant boy, and a demon at that? He probably hates me. I myself didn't notice how I began to sob, and tears flowed down my cheeks. Hey, what are you doing? They looked at me with obvious misunderstanding. Well, what are you doing? I didn't mean to hurt you. The prince lifted me off the bed and moved me onto his lap, starting to rock me to sleep and say something soothing in my ear. It was unusual and very pleasant. This is the first time someone treats me like this. He doesn't call me names, doesn't hit me, or even hate me. It's good and calm, and also very warm in your chest. You didn't hurt me, I sniffled, wiping my wet eyes with my fists. I just wanted to touch. Now you won't want to be friends, with me. Why don't I want to? My interlocutor became even more confused. I touched you, it's not right, and I'm a demon, you probably don't like touching me. At the end of the sentence I spoke very quietly, while blushing and trying to crawl off the lap of my prince. Apparently my attempts did not go unnoticed, as the guy intercepted me and sat me down on his legs again and pressed me closer to him. So much so that the air in my lungs suddenly ran out. And then, loosening his grip, he whispered quietly in his ear. "And it's not unpleasant at all, on the contrary, you're very soft and sweet." The Anbu ruffled the hair on my head, which made my face flush again. "And you're not a demon, more like a small, frightened bunny." Every word spoken by that calm voice made me blush to the ends of my hair, even though they were already red. The guy fell silent, and an awkward silence hung in the room, which was broken by the quiet grumbling from my savior's stomach. "But I didn't eat yesterday," my prince said quietly and a little thoughtfully. This statement made me jump out of the guy's arms and, stumbling on every word, invite me to breakfast. To which they answered with consent. I couldn't help but smile happily. For the first time, someone will voluntarily share a meal with me. Shouting for the guy to follow me, I ran out of the room, heading to the dining room to cook and heat breakfast. Itachi had a dream, and in this dream someone stood very close, gently squeezing his hand. The guy tried to look at this mysterious man, but the stranger's face and entire body were blurred, only a warm, sunny smile shone on his ghostly face. He probably would have continued to sleep if the instincts of a trained shinobi had not screamed that someone was inappropriately close to him. Without opening his eyes, the guy grabbed someone's small hand. Opening his eyes, he looked at a frightened face with 6 stripes on its rosy cheeks. The Uchiha began to observe in surprise the rapid change of emotions of his ward. At first he blushed, and then, in general, burst into tears. Itachi couldn't stand tears, and he never knew how to calm them down. His brother cried very rarely, and usually he dealt with his tears himself or sought reassurance from his mother. Therefore, now the brave Anbu did not know what to do and looked at the child in confusion. Somehow clumsily and ineptly he began to calm him down and did the first thing that came to his mind. He sat the child on his lap and hugged him. He didn't know what to say to make the boy stop crying, but the boy tried, putting into his words all the confidence and calm that his shinobi training could provide him with. The reason for the tears was incomprehensible to him. At first he assumed that he had hurt the baby, because he is so small and fragile. Even Sasuke against his background looks like a spreading oak next to a yew tree. But everything turned out to be even more incomprehensible and confusing. Naruto was afraid that he, Itachi, would not want to be friends with him. Getting ready for this mission, the heir of the great clan thought for some time and drew up an expected psychological portrait of his future ward. Now he was surprised and at the same time despite the expected reaction of the child. Further words caused shock and awakened in the genius of the Uchiha clan a desire to protect, which was actually strange, since this child was a stranger to him. It was also noticeable that the constant kicking and poking of the villagers did not pass without a trace for the child. He became fearful and it was clear that it was difficult for him to share his opinion with someone. And even words about a demon. But the boy is smart and can guess that the Kyuubi is sealed in him. How imprudent. Finally, having almost calmed Naruto down, Itachi began to think about how to accidentally leave the Jinchuriki's house, but the guy was betrayed by his own body, which made the plaintive sound of someone dying of starvation, followed by the kid's offer of breakfast, which was impossible to refuse. The Anbu member had to stay for an indefinite period. Rising from the surprisingly soft and comfortable bed, Itachi stretched hard until he crunched and yawned sweetly. Usually he couldn't sleep in an unfamiliar place, but today he probably slept even better than at home. Having found the bathroom, the guy washed himself and hastily put his hair in order, after which he went down to the kitchen, where Naruto was already in full swing. The boy deftly handled the cooking utensils, heating the food and setting the table. "Sit down, it's almost ready." Hearing footsteps, the boy turned and smiled. The guy could only listen to his charge and sit down at a small table, on which various dishes magically quickly appeared. The first dish he tried caused him to sigh in surprise. There was something to be surprised about. Itachi, in general, believed that cooking was something incomprehensible and tried not to go into the kitchen again, especially when his mother reigned there. No, he could cook rice if necessary, let's say on a mission. But he would no longer be responsible for the quality and taste of the result. And it was strange that the child could cook as well as Mikoto. The ANBU assumed that it was hereditary, because Kushina-san's cooking was simply magical. Very tasty, thank you. Is it true? You like? The child jumped up excitedly, and then, realizing this, quickly began to blush. Yes, you cook great, don't be shy. Thank you, the child said, blushing even more. Why don't you eat? Sit down. I sat down happily opposite my prince. I didn't even want to eat, but I didn't want to upset my guest and also ate a little. Unbeknownst to himself, he began to look at the guy, becoming even more convinced that he was very handsome. The ANBU looked up at me and my cheeks turned an embarrassed crimson. You know, I haven't introduced myself yet, the prince said thoughtfully, putting away the now empty plate. My name is Uchiha Itachi. And I'm Uzumaki Naruto, I said sadly. Now he will understand who he is sitting at the same table with and will no longer want to be around, and maybe he will hit you like yesterday's drunkard. But I liked him. He is so extraordinary, handsome, smart, brave, and his voice is very pleasant. I didn't even understand when I started sobbing loudly and wiping away the tears that had come with my hands. Now he definitely won't want to bother with such a winner. What happened here while I was recovering? Kurama's voice sounded menacingly in my head. Kurama. That's it, I already understood everything. So why did you bring that damned Uchiha here? Kurama-san, Itachi-san is very good, he saved me yesterday. I sobbed and burst into tears even more. I felt myself being hugged and pressed to a warm chest. So, stop crying, what did I tell you? Shinobi, don't cry. And fell silent, which even scared me. It's strange, but maybe it's all about my gift. Now, looking at your jumps of emotions, we can say that it's all about technique, and again he is silent. He thinks, probably. Gradually I began to calm down again, under the pleasant and warm stroking of my head. What a shame. Now my prince will think that I'm a wimp and a crybaby. Taking his eyes away from someone else's chest, he looked into the guy's eyes. What's strange is that I didn't see contempt in his eyes, but when I tried to listen to his feelings, I realized that he was a little worried about me and he was ashamed and pleased, okay? I cannot say for sure. Well, you've finally calmed down. A smile suits you better than tears, he smiled at me softly, like a little one, and with his long fingers wiped away the wet tear tracks on my cheeks. Sorry, I wet your clothes. He looked at his chest in confusion, then laughed quietly, but I didn't feel offended or unpleasant that they were laughing at me. No, rather it was pleasant, and warmth spread through my heart. Clothes are not scary, the main thing is that you don't cry anymore. Maybe we can switch to you. Fine. I didn't say anything, just smiled happily and nodded. Probably, my wish, which I made for my birthday while blowing out the candles, finally came true. To avoid disappointment in people, you need to get rid of illusions. Learn to accept people as they are. There are no perfect people. You can find good people, but even they can be selfish, irritable, and gloomy at times. Abraham Maslow. After Itachi had breakfast, he began to quickly get ready to go somewhere. Quickly saying that he needed to go home, he slipped out of my house. However, he did not forget to promise in parting that he would come to me in a few hours. Having seen the back of my savior, I sat happily smiling on the sofa in the secret library. Having opened the scroll with another interesting seal, I tried to delve into the contents of what was written, but for some reason I could not properly concentrate on reading. The face of my savior could not get out of my head. So why are you sighing like a girl in love? The fox muttered displeasedly. He's so extraordinary, like a real prince, I answer quietly, with a breath. Okay, you can communicate with him, but don't tell him anything about me, Kyubi sighed somehow doomedly. Thank you, thank you, thank you. For some reason, this conversation calmed me down, and then I could calmly read more scrolls with Fuin seals. Today I decided to learn how to seal elemental techniques, and more specifically, Fuka Hoin, fire sealing method. So, first I carefully repeat the hand seals I studied yesterday, which are needed for activation. Rat Bird Special Seal Tiger. I already know how to fold them all, although I still have a long way to go to the speed with which Shounen and Jonin do it. The design of the seal itself is very difficult, and if I were not an Uzumaki, I would have to study very long and hard to draw the lines correctly, remember the seal pattern, and it's not a fact that everything will work out correctly and the creator will not blow himself up when using such a scroll. As for Uzumaki, we intuitively feel when a seal is made correctly and when a mistake is made in it. Also, my clanmates somehow have their brains wired in such a way that we can completely memorize a seal in just a few minutes, and then reproduce them on a piece of paper or other material. And in order to even create a simple scroll, you need to have a fairly large supply of chakra, which not every shinobi can boast of. So I was able to learn such a difficult drawing for others in just a few hours. Now I'm sitting at the desk of the secret library and, having unrolled the scroll, I carefully move a brush with ink over it, slowly pouring chakra into the script of the inscription. For the latter, you need to have excellent control over chakra, which is very difficult with such a large reserve as mine. So the last loop and you're done. Because of my zeal, I didn't even notice how I stuck out the tip of my tongue and started snoring like a hedgehog. But still I was able to do it. I had to suffer over this seal for 2 whole days. At first, I fed too much chakra into the brush, which caused the first 3 scrolls to burn. Then my hand involuntarily twitched from fatigue, and therefore several hieroglyphs looked incorrect and, accordingly, carried a different meaning. No, I did not destroy these scrolls. On the contrary, at the request of the fox, I left them so that I could later slip them to one of my well-wishers. This was the first serious seal I performed, before I mostly trained something easy and not dangerous. With joy from the work successfully done, I squealed happily, rolled up the scroll and threw it into my bag. I will also have to find someone with the element of fire and ask him to throw something at me. Although I heard that the Uchiha's main element is Katan, maybe Itachi-san will not refuse to help me in training. I involuntarily blushed at my last thoughts. Today was inconvenient. It was early morning, almost all of Konoha was still fast asleep, so Itachi was now quietly and unnoticed making his way through the garden in front of his house. Right now he was trying to use all his hiding skills. The dissolved clone he sent yesterday to warn his parents and brother about his mission told him that his brother was very offended by him and would certainly throw a tantrum at him if he caught sight of the youngest member of their family. Quietly making his way through the bushes, Itachi climbed up the wall to the window of his room and slipped like a shadow inside the house. "Ni-san, you promised me that you would go with me to the festival in honor of the victory over the Nine Tails." The dissatisfied voice of his younger brother, who had been waiting for Itachi in his room all night, came from behind. "Sorry Ototo, I had to stay late on the mission. But next time we'll definitely go there," the elder Uchiha said, sitting down on the porticos and patting the small Uchiha on the head. "Okay," my brother muttered offendedly and turned away. "But now you will train with me," the child said categorically. Somehow the guy naturally began to compare Naruto and Sasuke. They were probably complete opposites to each other. Starting from his appearance, a fragile and small Jinchuriki with soft and rounded faces, the younger Uchiha had a childish, wiry body, and soft, childish faces. Gradually became sharper. They were also completely different in character. If Uzumaki was soft, sympathetic and shy, then his own brother was arrogant, touchy, envious, and sometimes rude, especially to those whom he considered inferior to himself. Previously, the Anbu did not notice, or simply did not want to notice, all these. His brother, but for some reason now looking at him, he began to understand that he and his family had missed something in raising Sasuke. Disappointment rushed through my soul like corrosive acid. No, it's stupid to be disappointed in a person, because his brother never hid anything. Itachi simply preferred not to notice all this. And just recently I even tried to justify it, but it's all stupid. He could now rudely tell him about his thoughts, but again he did not. They raised an egoist, while this child can still listen to someone, but years will pass and it will be too late for him to say anything. He will definitely say, but, not today. Sorry Sasuke, but I now need to talk to my father, and then go to the Hokage to submit a report. Itachi tried to reason with his brother. No. You promised me, the brother shouted, threatening to wake up both his mother and father with his screams, something that the heir of the Uchiha clan did not want at all right now. Let me leave you a clone. The guy made another attempt. Okay, my brother reluctantly agreed. The Anbu tried to squeeze out at least a smile, but it didn't work out well for him, so he once again ran through his brother's hair, at the same time noting that Naruto's was soft, and grabbed a towel and disappeared behind the door leading to the bathroom. The guy specially made the water a little warm to drive away morning drowsiness and stood under the cool streams. His head was a complete mess. Now there was a terrible struggle going on inside him. On the one hand, he should have informed the Hokage about all the boy's oddities. On the other hand, it was possible that he already knew everything, but still something inside him told him that it was still not worth talking about it. But the guy will definitely say about the Chunins' attack on the boy. In addition, there was one more oddity about this unusual child. Where did he go last night? And why did he return from there in such a state? Yes, the question is not for weak minds. He was also wondering who taught the child all those techniques, because he didn't invent them himself, and it's difficult to learn such things just by watching someone. Itachi probably could have called Naruto a little genius, but he would not have wished him the same fate as his. It would be better to let him remain a child longer. This thought was decisive in his torment. He won't tell Minato-san anything about the little Uzumaki's skills. Having turned off the water, the Uchiha climbed out of the shower and wiped his body and hair dry. He went to get dressed. Now he would have to go to the Hokage for an appointment, and he could talk to his father later, especially since it was not good to wake up his parents so early. Putting on a spare Anbu uniform, the guy, having created a clone, which he left for his brother, slipped out of the house. Itachi made his way to the Hokage residence. As far as the Uchiha knew, Minato-san was already at work at such a time. It all started with the fox suddenly remembering something important. But you and I, with training for speed and endurance, have never learned to throw bladed weapons. And now I stood in front of the house and methodically threw these naughty pieces of iron into the tree, which did not want to stick into the trunk in any way. And I completely did not understand what my mistake was, because I do everything exactly the same as those shinobi on training ground. Kunai and shuriken flew everywhere, but not at the target that I hastily scratched on the trunk of this unlucky tree. Kurama, as always, instead of explaining what I had done wrong, laughed in my subconscious, which made my ears ring a little, which did not give me any accuracy at all. Snorting with dissatisfaction, I bit my lip and, collecting the scattered pieces of iron, began to try again. The result was the same. I probably suffered for at least an hour, but for me, not a single kunai hit the target, not even a single one scratched the target, not even a tree. Snoring resentfully, I again climbed into the bushes to collect scattered weapons. I stand up, everything seems to be correct. I raise my hand, and someone else's hand clasps my hand. I shudder in fear and quickly turn my head to meet the warm and bottomlessly deep eyes of my savior. To be honest, I have given up hope that I will ever see my prince again, or even if I did, it is unlikely that he would want to talk to me. Nobody wants. Sniffling, I pressed myself against the Anbu's dark vest. Hey, why are you crying again, baby? Itachi said, gently ruffling my hair at the back of my head. I was afraid that you wouldn't want to see me again, I answered, sniffling. I promised that I would come, and I keep my promises. I had to remain silent, otherwise because of the tears, I then start to stutter a little. But I don't want him to think even worse about me, since he's already shown that he's a winner and a weakling. It was not enough for him to consider me a stutterer. I noticed that you are learning to throw kunai. If you want, I can help you. Really? From the unexpected proposal, I even forgot to be ashamed of my stuttering. Of course, and I feel that he is not lying. His feelings are so tender and affectionate, like a light summer breeze. Crossing his fingers, he summoned 2 clones, who ran in different directions. Within 5 minutes, raising his head, the boy saw 8 targets located in a circle. I looked blankly at my prince. But he didn't answer me, only 8 kunai appeared in his hands, as if by magic. Closing his eyes, he jumped into the air, turned over, several waves of his arms, the sound of metal, and all the targets, even those behind the stone, had iron stuck in them. It's okay, this Uchiha of yours, there's a lot to learn from him, Kurama muttered on the edge of hearing. A quiet squeal of admiration escaped spontaneously. This is the first time I've seen something like this. Running up to the deftly landing Anbu, I wanted to tell him that he was simply wonderful, strong, smart. I wanted to say a lot, but when I was already a few centimeters away from him, I could not utter a word because of the feelings overwhelming me. Unconsciously, I tried to convey to him all my feelings so that he could understand how extraordinary he still is. Itachi suddenly sighed in surprise, and a wave of misunderstanding and disbelief rushed from him. And looking into his eyes, I drowned in his feelings. There was so much that I could not figure out and understand them, but most of all it was overshadowed by some incomprehensible, but bright feeling. No, it wasn't fear, although I was ready for that, it was something else. Excitement? Maybe. At the residence, as Itachi had expected, Minato-san was already in place and sorting through the rubble of waste paper, which, by a strange coincidence, was called important documents. Quickly reporting on the past day, without going into detail about the abilities of the Hokage's son and the fact that he openly protected the boy. The Uchiha didn't forget to talk about the attack on Naruto. The guy was surprised, but still the boy was not indifferent to Minato, rather he was in some way afraid of his son or for his son. The ANBU also received permission to report once a week, and only in emergency cases to report immediately. Having bowed, Itachi left the office of the head of the village, and then the residence. Now the guy was on his way to his ward's house. Moving along the roofs of houses, the guy quickly reached his destination. But when he heard the sound of a metallic grinding sound, he stopped and then moved on secretly. In a clearing a few steps from the house, Naruto tried his best to hit the target, but no matter how hard he tried, the boy could not do anything. Taking a closer look, Itachi noticed that he was holding his hands incorrectly, which is why the shurikens were flying past the target. After watching a little more and marveling at the child's diligence, the guy decided to leave his shelter and quietly crept up to the boy. From the fact that the ANBU grabbed the child's hand with his own, Naruto shuddered noticeably in fear, and then, turning around, began to cry. That's the trouble with him, this time he was afraid that Itachi would not come to him again, and now he was affectionately huddled close to him. To distract the kid with something else, the guy offered to help him in training, to which he received sparkling eyes and the happiest smile that the young man could only see. After such a look, it was simply impossible not to justify the hopes placed on him. Itachi probably won't be able to answer why he came up with the idea to show off to the child, but he did it anyway. No one had ever shown such adoration and admiration for an Uchiha before today. And then other people's feelings flooded into him, as if a dam had broken and now they flowed in a raging stream through his consciousness. He had never felt such strong and all-consuming feelings before. It is generally not customary for ANBU to show their feelings to anyone, but now feeling all this, he understood that it was impossible not to feel. And if you forbid yourself to feel, then it will no longer be life, except perhaps existence. The guy let out a gasp of surprise. He had never heard of such a thing. No, or rather, he once read about something like this, but he had never encountered such a phenomenon in person. I think it's called empathy. But just once looking into the blue eyes and seeing anxiety and fear in them, he threw out all these stupid thoughts and tried to convey to the child his warmth, his admiration for him. And judging by the way fear began to slowly disappear from his eyes, he heard it. Some secrets, she thought, were best shared, and it is better to remain silent about some, carrying them like a heavy burden so that they cannot hurt others. Cassandra Clare. Infernal Devices 3, Clockwork Princess. He wasn't scared. On the contrary, his feelings gave only warmth and support. Looking up, I caught the eye of my savior. He smiled at me, which made me blush. Somehow I suddenly remembered that I was now standing stupidly and smiling, becoming more and more embarrassed with every second, looking more and more stupid. I had already completely withdrawn into myself, engaged in self-examination and self-flagellation, when I felt a slight heaviness on my head, and then Itachi ruffled my hair on the top of my head. It's nice, no one has ever touched me like that before. Well, shall we start training? Asked my prince. I nodded my head in agreement and picked up a kunai again. I take the stance I saw during a throwing lesson at the academy, take aim, raise my hand, and I'm just about to release the weapon when Itachi's large and undoubtedly strong hand covers my palm again. The guy straightens my palm a little, then, stroking my wrist, makes me change the angle of my hand. Together with me, he pulls my palm back and, swinging, forces me to release the weapon. The quiet whistle of cutting air and the sound of metal hitting wood. Taking a closer look, I notice that my kunai hit exactly the middle of the target. I happily raise my head and catch the eye of the Anbu. He smiled at me, showing approval. He moved my hand a few more times, helping me remember how to throw correctly, then he pulled away, and I had to try it myself. The first time was unsuccessful, but I was in a hurry. In the second, I took longer to aim, try it on, and tentatively move my hand. He threw it, the kunai entered the tree, but still did not hit the target. It took me about 10 more attempts for the blade to pass at least along the edge of the target. I practiced for about an hour before I was able to finally hit the center once out of 10 attempts. But still got it. Then I trained for another hour, and another, until my stomach loudly announced that it was time to have lunch, for the third hour after all. I blushed again and stole a glance at the guy. He said nothing, just smiled at the corners of his lips. Terribly embarrassed, even stuttering a little, I invited Itachi-san to have lunch with me. And most importantly and surprisingly, he agreed. Jumping for joy, I ran into the house. Having quickly rinsed my hands, I began to heat up the already prepared, but still cold food, and quickly cook the dishes that were missing for lunch. My prince at that time went to the bathroom to wash his hands, and when he returned, he offered to help me. Blushing, I suggested that he cut the vegetables into a salad, and he agreed. Then the kitchen was filled only with the measured clatter of a knife on a board, the light clink of a ladle on the metal of a pan, and the quiet rustling of a wooden spatula in a frying pan. I'm done, Itachi announced, wiping his hands on a towel. I'll do the same now, I'll just set the table, I rushed around the kitchen and said. The guy sat down at the table and began to watch me spin between the table, the stove and the sink. It was probably my imagination, but it seemed like the Anbu was smiling. Having placed the last plates on the table and putting chopsticks next to them, I also perched myself on a high chair, while being terribly embarrassed by my height, and that again I did not appear in the best condition. Bon appetit, the Uchiha said, smiling. Thank you, shall we start eating? I finished a little hesitantly. We dined in complete silence, with only the sound of a spoon hitting a plate scattered throughout the kitchen. Having finished eating, I ran to put the kettle on and scour the cabinets in search of green tea, and take out the remaining sweets from the refrigerator. Speaking of tea, it turns out that the fox was a great connoisseur of this drink, so I had to walk around the market for a long time, sniff each jar and choose, in Kurama's opinion, the best one. After that significant trip, all the sellers of this sheet rock shudder nervously only when they see me on the horizon. Itachi also appreciated both the tea and the dessert. Incredibly, it turns out that the Uchiha has a terrible sweet tooth, and knows good tea no worse than the Nine Tails. And his compliment about my abilities in cooking and choosing drinks made me blush once again today. Confusing. To hide my red face, I quickly began to collect the dishes from the table, put them in the sink and, in order not to put it off until later, I immediately started washing them. Feeling that my ears were starting to burn treacherously, I moved a stool to the sink, climbed onto it and, turning on the water, began to wash. Even through the sound of the water, I could hear the sigh of my guest. After which the guy came up to me, turned off the water and lowered me to the floor so that he himself, having first pushed back the chair, stood behind the sink. "Why, you're my guest, there's no need, I can do it myself," I said, stuttering. "Well, I have to somehow thank you for your hospitality," he turned, and I noticed that his eyebrows met on the bridge of his nose. "Thank you, no one has helped me before, you were the first," I admitted quietly. "Doesn't the cleaning lady come to see you?" my prince asked in surprise. "She comes, but she doesn't like me a little." "Well, yes, of course, she doesn't like you a little," Kurama mimicked me, "tell it like it is, she hates you." In general, Fox rarely spoke out on this matter, preferring to remain silent. And he's been taciturn lately. He usually speaks very harshly about my shortcomings, and especially doesn't like my tears. It's surprising that for several days now I've almost never stopped stirring up the dampness, but he's silent. "And what do you suggest?" Kurama grinned. "After the technique, your mood will fluctuate for at least another week, like fleas on Inuzuka dogs. That's why I'm silent. I understand that you're not feeling very well right now." "Sorry," the Uchiha's dejected voice. "Very close, pulled him out of his thoughts, I didn't want to upset you." I raised my head and came across deep black eyes, full of remorse and some kind of hidden sadness. Once again, tousling my hair on top of my head, he turned away again and began the interrupted task, washing the dishes. I didn't bother getting in the way, so I sat down at the table again, after pouring myself another mug of tea. I'm not such a big connoisseur of it and I'm unlikely to be able to distinguish different varieties of it just by smell, but I can't help but agree that the drink chosen by Kyubi is really tasty. The color is pleasant, rich yellow with some hint of green, the smell is light and unobtrusive, as for the taste, it is soft and quite a bit sugary. A tiny jasmine flower floats on the surface. I don't want to be intrusive, my savior's voice brought me out of my thoughts again, but where did you come from yesterday in such an unpresentable form? I thought about it. Of course, it's not good to lie, but on the other hand, this is not my secret, and it would be rude to give away their secret testing ground to already deceased relatives, but I really wanted to tell this man everything. It seemed to me that I had known Itachi for more than 1 year, I felt good and comfortable next to him, I felt about the same only with the fox, with some seventh sense understanding that Kurama would never harm me and would never offend me. "There is one seal that could help you in this situation," Kurama's voice suddenly rang out. "What kind of technique?" I asked. "Quite a remarkable seal, it was placed to protect information leakage. It is called Sokuhi Surufu no Jutsu, or Seal of the Keeper of Secrets. But it also shouldn't be confused with the seals that Anbu put in the root." The fox wanted to say something else, but I interrupted him. "What is Anbu root?" "I'll tell you later, don't interrupt me." "So where am I? Oh yeah. The Keeper of Secrets seal is very different from the Zeka Kenzetsu no Jutsu that Anbu use. Firstly, it will be impossible to get rid of our seal. Secondly, it does not kill the bearer if he tries to give out information to someone, it simply makes him go numb, and no mentalist will be able to find even a mention of the information hidden by the seal in the bearer's head. And it is impossible to remove a correctly applied Uzumaki seal in itself. Therefore, no matter how you look at it, this option suits us in any case, Kyubi finished happily. Do you know how to put this stamp? I don't remember exactly, but in your library I already saw a scroll with this seal, the Ninetales said thoughtfully. I think you won't be able to reproduce it on your own, but here are a few scrolls with a ready-made seal in the library. All you have to do is attach the sheet to the Uchiha and release chakra, mentally imagining what exactly you want to hide. Wait, here, I'm here now. I shouted, already running out of the kitchen. Running into the office, I scratched my hand with the usual movement and, placing it against the wall, directed chakra. A click and the door opened. Running inside, I eagerly began to scour the shelves with already read scrolls. This is not where you are looking, barked the fox, who was tired of watching my attempts. Look in the second drawer of the desk, I think I saw a couple there. I wanted to be offended that he didn't immediately tell me where to look, but then I gave up on it. Still, I will be the first to approach him with conversations. Having quickly returned everything to its place, and not forgetting to close the library after me, I jumped out into the corridor, and, stumbling on the stairs, thank Kami, that I was on the penultimate step, I flew head over heels to the first floor. Hearing the roar that I made as I fell, Itachi-san ran out. In his hands, I still managed to notice a kunai, which he hastily began to hide in his hip pouch, after making sure that no one attacked me. And then he laughed, loudly, and barely noticeable tears gathered in the corners of his black eyes. At first I wanted to be offended, but then I changed my mind. This laughter was not offensive. On the contrary, it was warm. I often caught the laughter of my peers when I was still in the orphanage, and therefore I learned to distinguish between them. Involuntarily, I also smiled uncertainly. After laughing, the guy came up to me and extended his hand. Already as usual for myself, I felt how my face, ears, and part of my neck began to glow. Turning my head away, I still offered my hand, and within a second I was standing. Well, what was so important that made you run away? My prince said sternly, but I noticed that his eyes were laughing. I was running around looking for, here, I stammered and showed him a small scroll held tightly in my hands. This is, any reminder of amusement disappeared from his eyes, and his voice became firm and confident. You see, this is not my secret, and I can't tell it just like that, I said more and more uncertainly, and in the end my voice disappeared altogether. Okay, Itachi suddenly said, and I was already sure that he would refuse. Come on, I'll sit down, so it will be more convenient for you to apply the seal. Yes. We went into the hall and sat on the sofa, or rather, the ANBU sat down on the upholstered furniture, and I stood next to him and began to unroll the scroll, looking through the elegant script of hieroglyphs. Having formed the activation seal, I placed the scroll on the guy's specially exposed shoulder and began to slowly release chakra, while mentally going through all the information that I would want to hide from others. Well, firstly, this is everything connected with kurama, secondly, this is a training ground and a library, and thirdly, this is a feature of my chakra and the possible awakening of the Rinnegan. Look like that's it. Having stopped the technique, I collapsed exhaustedly on the floor. Consciousness began to slowly float. When it got dark before my eyes, I still had time to feel how they were carefully picking me up and putting me on something soft. Itachi liked to watch the child's funny attempts to hit the white uneven circle of the target, but even despite all the failures, Naruto did not give up and, with tenacity worthy of a donkey, continued to throw kunai until he really began to succeed. And the guy liked this persistence. Soon the training had to be stopped because the boy was hungry. In truth, Itachi himself was already thinking about taking a break and going to lunch. Lunch was excellent. The guy especially remembered the delicious green tea and balls of his favorite sweet dango. After such a noble meal, the ANBU wanted to do something nice for the baby, and he volunteered to wash the dishes. Of course, the Uchiha expected that the Uzumaki would, as the boy delicately noted, dislike the villages, but such a clear neglect of their duties came as a big surprise to the guy. Making a note for the future, Itachi will definitely hint to the Hokage about the cleaning lady's attitude towards Naruto. For some reason, the heir to the Uchiha clan remembered last night, and he wondered where the little Jinchuriki had gone. So he asked. The kid immediately became somewhat depressed and went deep into his thoughts, and then, jumping up, rushed upstairs, finally shouting to wait for him here. The ANBU was simply bursting with the desire to peek, but some part inside him stubbornly insisted that he shouldn't do this, especially since Naruto might be offended, and they had only just begun to trust each other at least a little. For the same reason, he agreed to supply the seal, although he was bursting with curiosity about where this child managed to find such a complex seal. The Uzumaki concentrated extremely, made a seal of concentration, and the guy himself felt chakra pouring into him. Turning his head, he noticed how black script spread across his body from the scroll, and then was drawn back to the place of contact with the parchment. Then the boy stopped pouring chakra and put the scroll away. The skin underneath was clean, without the slightest hint that just a second earlier there had been seal designs there. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Naruto begin to fall, and only at the last moment, near the floor, did he manage to catch him in his arms. Having laid the boy on the sofa, the ANBU went to the kitchen to get a bowl of water and a small towel. He placed the basin near the sofa, wet the cloth, squeezed it out and lowered it onto the slightly hot forehead of his ward. Unexpectedly even for himself, the guy raised the child's head, sat down on the sofa and lowered Naruto onto his lap. The hand automatically ran through the red hair, fingering the soft strands. A strange child who simply has countless secrets. He disappears somewhere at night. At such an early age he has good control over chakra, otherwise the scroll with the seal simply would not have worked. He knows several techniques, which seems incredible for such a little one. Although, it's not for him to talk about this, at his age he also already mastered all the techniques, and maybe even a little more. Having made a mental note for the future to ask the boy about this, he stopped thinking about anything at all, and only his left hand continued to mechanically stroke Naruto's head. Calm down, there is no need to run somewhere, and no one demands anything from him. How long ago was this? Time is a mirage, it shortens in moments of happiness and stretches out in hours of suffering. Aldington R. I don't know how long I slept, but I woke up to the sound of someone lightly combing through my hair. But for some reason I did not feel fear, peace emanated from this man. Itachi, only with him I felt such peace. Somehow opening my eyes and blinking, I saw the thoughtful and somewhat detached face of my savior. It seemed that he himself did not notice these simple stroking of my head. Unconsciously, I fidgeted myself, which attracted the guy's attention. Waking up as if after a dream, Itachi looked at me in surprise, and then just as suddenly relaxed. Are you feeling better? The ANBU asked with a soft smile. Why yes, I stammered. It seemed to me that the Uchiha hesitated a little, not knowing how to continue the conversation. And again, lost in his thoughts, he began to finger strands of my hair, which made me blush. Confusing. You promised to tell me where you went yesterday, his voice rang out sharply in complete silence, making me twitch slightly. Yes, I remember, I answered. I tried to get up, I really tried, because my body didn't want to obey me in any way and kept trying to fall back onto the sofa. Nevertheless, I somehow managed to get up and, in order not to fall, I grabbed the back of the sofa with my hands. Come on, I'll show you. Breathing heavily, I hobbled out. A quiet sigh was heard behind me, after which I was picked up by arms that were strong for an 11-year-old, although in appearance you couldn't tell that such strength was hidden in this slender and fit body. Gasping in surprise, I grabbed the ANBU vest harder. He carried me out of the house like a princess. I felt my face heat up at the last thought. Tell me where to go, a calm and measured voice interrupted my thoughts. In that direction, he pointed his finger in the direction of the forest. And we went, or rather Itachi, quickly jumping from branch to branch, carried me there, in the indicated direction. Within a few minutes we were standing near the entrance tree. Approaching him, I asked my prince to put his hand on the tree and release chakra. I covered the top of his palm with mine and released my chakra. That's it, now Itachi has remembered the barrier and will let him through. The space in front of us shimmered as usual for me, letting us inside. Only after crossing the barrier, the guy sighed in surprise, would even say in awe, looking at the training ground. I even felt proud of my clan. I was here yesterday, training a complex technique, so I almost completely used up my reserve. I quietly justified myself. I didn't know there was such a place in Konoha, the soft voice of my savior echoed. Kushina-san never talked about him. The guy probably wanted to say something else, but realizing that he had clearly said more than necessary, he fell silent. Mom didn't like training here, and most likely she just forgot about it. Do you know who your parents are? The young man asked in shock. Yeah, I'm not blind, and I can notice how the residents look at me. I even overheard several conversations and found out that they are Jinchuriki. It wasn't a lie. After I found out that kurama was sealed inside me, I began to listen carefully to the conversations of adults. From time to time in their disputes it came up both about the fact that I was the container of the demon, and about who was his previous vessel. In general, people love to talk, especially when they're drunk. It was when they were completely blasted that they no longer cared about what to talk about, regardless of the level of secrecy of the subject of discussion. Kushina-san, at one time, was my teacher, and taught me several seals. The guy began to speak quietly. Sitting down on the bench and sitting me next to him, Itachi began to talk about my mother. He talked a lot. He told me funny stories from the days when they were studying, told me about how my mother would run after my father all over Konoha with a frying pan when he came late in the evening or a little tipsy. We laughed and sometimes were sad. It turns out that my mother was a very positive person. Of course, I heard the story of my parents from the lips of the fox, but he could not tell everything and not explain everything. Itachi also did not know much, but that was enough for me, because he was the second who wanted to tell me at least something. By the end, I was already crying out loud, not caring that the animals ran away in different directions from my howling. The Uchiha didn't stop me. He let me cry, helped me free myself from the melancholy that was lodged somewhere deep inside. The guy didn't do much, but I felt his warmth and support. After half an hour of sobbing, I noticeably calmed down and was only quietly sobbing. I began to feel sleepy, and incredible fatigue spread throughout my body. Having fallen to the side, I decided to succumb to fatigue and fell asleep. Somehow it so happened that Itachi already, once again, acted for Naruto in the role of something between a vest for tears and a pillow. But he didn't care much about it. On the contrary, it was even nice to feel that someone needed him so much. Correcting the boy sliding off the bench, Itachi noted with sadness that now he would have to sit in this position for quite a long time. In truth, he was bored. He was already beginning to think about either falling asleep himself, or making a clone and sending him to check whether it was possible to leave the training ground without Uzumaki's permission. The ANBU didn't even consider the idea of waking up the child. Having created a clone, he began to wait, which, in principle, he did not have to do for long. The double returned a minute later with disappointing results. Naruto fidgeted a little, making himself comfortable on the Uchiha's lap and smacked his lips sweetly in his sleep. Maybe I should really sleep? The teenager drawled thoughtfully. But he was not destined to sleep, since literally a meter from the bench an ominous scarlet chakra began to swirl. Like a beginner, but already an accomplished ANBU, the guy got up, and in an instant activated the Sharingan and pulled out a kunai from the bag attached to his hip. Calm down, and turn off these red lanterns already, they make me nervous, something not yet fully formed said with growling notes, although the heir of the Uchiha clan could say with confidence that the Ninetales was now appearing in front of him. What do you need? Asked the shinobi, without putting away his weapon and leaving the dojutsu activated. The demonic chakra became even denser and slowly began to form from it, first a head, then a torso, and at the end 9 tails materialized one after another, with which the emerging fox fanned himself. The size of Kyubi did not exceed a meter at the withers and 1.5 in length, excluding tails. Just talk while Naruto sleeps, the demon lounged imposingly on the ground. Aren't you afraid that I might inform the Hokage that you got out of Naruto? Itachi asked casually, scanning the 9 tails with his Sharingan. Of course. He wouldn't talk about it, at least not while the fox was sitting on his butt and not trying to destroy the village. The teenager didn't want to upset the Uzumaki. And he knew very well that as soon as Danzo or one of the other advisors found out about this, the child would not live. The old senile people won't even look at the fact that Naruto is the son of the fourth, and they are unlikely to inform the current Hokage himself. It's so easy to persuade the daimyo to call Minato to some important meeting, and in his absence some crazy person will kill the child and everyone will believe it. There have already been precedents. But even if doubts remain, they cannot prove anything. No, because one of the conditions in that press was non-disclosure of everything that concerns me, says the fox, without changing his relaxed pose. And you can't do anything to me, because there's only a small part of my chakra and my mind, but in reality I still continue to be inside Naruto. I see, what did you want to talk about? Having calmed down a little, the young man deactivated the Sharingan. I guess it was Naruto's father who sent you to keep an eye on him. Therefore, I ask you not to talk too much about his skills. My current Jinchuriki is not Kushina, there is neither a clan nor a village behind him, and if someone finds out that Naruto is far from being a mindless weapon of the village, ready to tear veins, just to save the hated residents, who only recently, sputtering with saliva, sending curses to his back, and threw stones, but a completely independent person, and even one with good potential. Believe me, they will take me out without hesitation, and the boy will die. And what benefit do you have from this? Didn't you want to break out of Naruto? Itachi looked at Fox suspiciously. I don't want to spend my entire immortal life working for completely brainwashed crazy people, and I've already become attached to the boy, and he improved my living conditions, much better than those of Kushina and Mito. Clearly, I will try to hide some information, but I will still report to the Hokage without outsiders in a less truncated form. Okay, since we agreed, I went and hunted, but for the first time I managed to get out. I haven't stretched my paws for more than 5 years. Kyubi had already disappeared into the thickets of the forest for about 5 minutes when the Uchiha turned his gaze to the child on his lap. He immediately noticed how he woke up, but did not betray him, although he was sure that the awakening of his carrier was not hidden from the 9 tails, but for some reason he did not betray the Uzumaki. You don't have to pretend anymore, he imperceptibly raised the corners of his lips, in a hint of a shinobi smile. Sorry, the child whispered, blushing and trying to hide his burning face in his hands. Okay, get up, let's go, show me the training ground, and at the same time we'll practice a little, and I noticed an obstacle course there. Kurama doesn't allow me to do it, he says I'm still small and weak for this. So they went together to explore the Uzumaki training ground, although Naruto already knew him well, but he really liked that he knew something that the other didn't know. It was also interesting to tell and show different places and observe approval, and sometimes admiration, in the eyes of the genius of the Uchiha clan. After that day when I threw a tantrum, the days flew by at incredible speed. Now Itachi, in addition to Kurama, worked with me every day for 7 months. During this time, I dramatically developed my empathy, as well as my sense of smell and hearing. If I concentrated well, releasing chakra throughout my body, then at a distance of 1 kilometer there would be no secret conversations for me, unless they were sitting behind a barrier. But it was very difficult and sometimes painful to be in crowded places, a cacophony of alien emotions, extraneous sounds, and sharp and sometimes unpleasant odors immediately formed in my head. I also learned several seals and techniques. I was very lucky that Itachi has one of the futon elements. He taught me several techniques of this element. The first thing I learned was the ability to channel wind chakra through weapons. The second, Fusijin no Jutsu, sand wind technique. When using this technique, a gust of wind mixed with dust was created. The sand, settling on the trees, prevented the opponent from standing firmly on his feet. Also, the first impulse could blind the enemy. And the last thing I managed to learn was Futon, Repusho, wind release, palm of the storm. This jutsu created a gust of wind that increased the power and speed of thrown weapons. Also, literally a month after my 5th birthday, Fox decided that I was ready to start crawling around the obstacle course. So far, in the first 6 months, I was only able to overcome the first difficulty level out of 6. Surprisingly, my prince walked the entire strip the first time, and as QB put it, in record time. Yes, my savior is truly a genius, not only of the Uchiha clan, but of the entire village. Today, the fox was in some kind of anticipation all day. As far as I can assume, Kurama wants to show me some new technique, and all because Itachi was called to an urgent mission a week ago, and it is unlikely that he will appear in the next 3 days. Therefore, during the absence of the observer, QB began to drive me to the fullest, trying to cram much more into my head than could possibly fit there. What are we going to do today? I couldn't stand it, standing at the training ground. I will instill in you another element, Kato. The fox announced proudly. Okay, stop being polite, dive to me. I obediently sat down on the grass in the lotus position, closed my eyes and imagined the sewer tunnels. A moment and I feel the water under my feet. I sigh heavily and trudge towards where I feel the Kyubi's chakra. Something needs to be done about this dampness. It's not surprising that Kurama wants to kill everyone, too, would have gotten angry after the first week of living in these tunnels. The Nine Tails greeted me with a very anticipatory grin. And the eyes simply beamed with kindness. Obviously, he came up with some kind of dirty trick, and all due to the fact that Itachi is not controlling him now. Next to the Uchiha fox is somehow embarrassed to put a lot of pressure on me, or something else, but the main thing is that it's almost the weekend for me. No, my prince also drives me up a sweat, but his ideas are more gentle, and somehow designed for my less than 6 years. Kurama sometimes forgets that I'm still a child, and he gets carried away, like Renina when controlling chakra. Don't be afraid that you got up so far, come here, Kyubi cooed in the voice of a tempting snake. He didn't know he could do that. Taking a deep breath, I trudged to give up. I sat down next to the wide-open doors of what was once Kurama's prison, and I prepared to listen to his revelations. The red chakra came close to me and wrapped me like in a cocoon, but I could see through it perfectly, and it adapted to all my movements. What is this? I'm trying to give you the fire element, but it still turns out wrong that I'm the fire demon fox, and you don't yet own this element, but I'll try to make it native to you. And it will be easier for you when you stay in the Rinnegan. Thank you, I whispered quietly, looking through the translucent chakra into scarlet eyes with a vertical pupil. This is where the story ends.